adopted and verbal confirmation when we are broadcasting.
Chair, that the live stream has been started.
Right. Welcome to this meeting of the Planning and Regulatory Committee. The agenda papers and other relevant information for the meeting are available for the public to viewing on the Herefordshire Council website. Please remember your words and actions should be chosen carefully, and members are reminded that speeches are limited to 3 minutes. The Council is streaming this meeting live on the Herefordshire Council YouTube channel and also making a recording. The recording will be available via the Council's website shortly after the meeting has concluded. Other attendees are permitted to film, photograph and record the meeting, provided that it does not disrupt the business of the meeting. If you do not wish to be filmed or photographed, please identify yourself so that anyone who intends to record the meeting can be made aware. To ensure that the recording quality is maintained, could members speak as clearly as possible and keep background noise to a minimum, and ensure that mobile phones and other devices are turned to silent. Welcome to those two into attendance. I'll now ask Ms. Gibbons to introduce all the officers for this morning.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Kelly Gibbons. I'm the Service Manager for Development Management. Turning to my right, I have Oliver Jones, who will present item 7, and then later on Heather Carlisle will join us to report item 8, Josh Evans for item 9, Oliver do item 10, and for today I will be presenting item 6. We also have Katie Jones from the Local Highway Authority to my right, and online we have the Legal Advisor Mark Sorrentino. Thank you.
Right, I'll now move on to the agenda itself. Item 1, apologies. We have received apologies from Councillors Andrews, Foxton and Stone and Bolter. Item 2, name substitutes. Councillor Owens is acting as a substitute for Councillor Andrews, and Councillor Harvey is acting as a substitute for Councillor Foxton. We have no other substitutes. Declarations of interest. Please can you indicate if you wish to declare an interest, and I will call each councillor in turn. Are there any declarations of interest? No? Then we'll move on to item 4 to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 5th of June 2024. Are the minutes of the meeting held on the 5th of June? Oh, sorry, Councillor Simmons.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to raise a point of clarification with the minutes from the last committee meeting with regard to land upper house line down. I just note in the conditions that we resolved as the committee to prohibit all amplified music in the form of a site management plan. I just wanted to check that point 7 there says no amplified or other music shall be played outside the following times, and that when the notice is issued that point 7 is removed and that we capture that there's no amplified music.
Yes, yeah, that's fine.
Right. With that proviso, can we now, can you please now vote? Those in favour of the minutes be adopted? Thank you. Those against? That's carried. Right, we'll now move on to Chairman's announcement. I have no Chairman's announcements. We have a very full agenda today, and so perhaps we could try not and repeat ourselves constantly, the same issues. But anyway, we'll move on now. Can I now request the public speakers present in person for the agenda item 6 join the meeting? Mr. Robinson, Mr. Melling and Mr. Broomfield. Could you please take your place at the public participation tables at the front? Good morning and welcome to the meeting. I'll ask you to speak following the officer's presentation. Can I now ask Ms. Gibbons to make the presentation of this item, which is for the construction of 36 dwellings, new vehicle access and pedestrian access, internal infrastructure, landscaping, open space and associated works, including the demolition of a piggery building. Ms.
Thank
Gibbons.
you, Chair. So thank you very much for everybody for attending the site visit yesterday. Hope you found that useful. I'll also draw your attention to the update sheet that was circulated yesterday early evening with the numbers of additional representations and some additional comments from the applicant's agent. I think a number of those were sent directly to the members as well, so I think you would have seen them over the course of the week. So turning to the presentation, the application site is demarked by the red star in the normal fashion and lies to the northwest edge of Cowall. The parish of Cowall is on the eastern boundary of the county and between the towns of Malvern to the northeast and Ledbury to the southwest. Cowall is a main settlement for the parish and comprises two areas known as Cowall Stone and Cowall Green. It benefits from a range of facilities including shops, public houses, library, post office, pharmacy and doctors, as well as other local businesses and schools. There's also a railway station. The application site comprises 3 land parcels totalling 4.3 hectares. The main part of the site is a reverse L-shaped pasture field which sits immediately to the south of Old Church Road. The southeastern corner of the site is formed by a separate, much smaller, irregularly shaped pasture field, and the southwestern part includes an area of old agricultural buildings, now predominantly in a state of disrepair, that are surrounded by trees, scrub, vegetation and rough grass. The site is bounded by detached residential dwellings to the south, in the crescent, the east, Stone Drive and Stone Close. Old Church Road also contains residential properties but has a more rural context, and it runs along the northern boundary of the application site. Hopyard Cottage abuts the western portion of the site and is the property adjacent to where we entered the site yesterday, just to help with context. Turning to matters of heritage, I would draw members' attention to sections 6.54 to 6.77 of the officer's report that considers the designated and non-designated heritage assets. The conclusions of the report also consider the matter. The site is located within the bounds of the Cowall Stone Upper Cowall Conservation Area, the extent of which is shown by the red line on the plan. There are no listed buildings within the site. However, there are listed buildings in the vicinity of the site, located along Old Church Road, close to the northern boundary of the site. These are described on the slide and are shown by the blue markers, and this was the plan that was attached to the handouts that I gave members yesterday. The site also lies within the Malvern Hills area of outstanding natural beauty that is now known as the Malvern Hills National Landscape. The significance of this is explored in detail in the report, but specifically within the landscape section, and it includes the details of the recent changes to the legislative position that requires the local authority to seek to further the purpose of conserving and enhancing the natural beauty of the area of outstanding natural beauty. Yesterday, I also drew members' attention to the report submitted with the application that considered the viewpoints in the assessments of impacts from key points. One of these is included at the bottom of the slide with the view from Perseverance Hill. There is also a large oak tree on the northern boundary of the site, which is protected by a tree preservation order, and I'll consider this in a later slide. The majority of the site falls within the settlement boundary for Cowall as designated by the Cowall Neighbourhood Development Plan, with the exception being the 2 parcels of land to the south and west, which are shaded blue on the policies map on the screen, and these are designated as open space. The site is referred to as Site 2 Gravesend Farm and is allocated through policies CD7 of the Cowall Neighbourhood Development Plan for housing development of at least 32 dwellings. The officer report discusses the requirement of this policy in much more detail. A question was raised yesterday on the site visit about housing delivery in the parish, and I would draw members' attention to paragraph 6.9 and 6.10, which sets out this position and confirms that as of April 2023, 73 of the required 160 dwellings have been completed. But there are 55 also that are committed, and this includes development of this site's allocation. Therefore, the delivery of this site for development contributes towards meeting the requirements of this neighbourhood development plan and for the growth of the parish. The application seeks full planning permission for a total of 36 dwellings, a new vehicle and pedestrian access, internal infrastructure, landscaping, open space and associated works, and includes a demolition of the existing piggery buildings. The layout of the proposal is detailed on the proposed slide to the left-hand side, this is the plan that I handed to members yesterday as well. The proposed development includes a mix of 2, 3 and 4 bedroom properties in the form of detached, semi-detached and terrace properties. 7 properties are to be bungalows and the remainder of the properties are 2-storey. The proposal consists of 22 open market dwellings and 14 affordable dwellings, including tenures such as social rent and first homes. An accessible bungalow for social rent has also been included to meet a proven need. The density of the scheme in the developed area of the site would be just under 16 dwellings per hectare. And just for clarity, this calculation excludes the public open space. As required by the NDP policy, a new vehicular access is proposed onto Old Church Road to the north of the site. And the plan extract at the top details how this will be set out and how the visibility displays are achieved. The Transport and Highways section of the Officer Report confirms the policy position and outlines all the concerns and how the scheme has evolved to address matters raised during the process. In part, the response to this, the proposal now includes off-site works to introduce a new footpath into the public highway on Old Church Road. The proposed footway is shown on the extract of the plan in the centre of this slide and was shown to members on the site visit yesterday. The footway is to be delivered on the northern side of the carriageway and is to be of a reduced width ranging between 0.9 metres and 1.2 metres in width. It does, however, provide footway connectivity from the site into the existing footway on Stone Drive and beyond. We also saw yesterday when we were at the site visit the TPO'd oak tree that lies to the west of the proposed access. During the course of the application, plans were amended to address concerns raised by the tree officer about the impact on this tree. The 2 plans at the top show the proposal in February 2023 and how these are amended to remove the driveway from the root protection areas, addressing concerns raised. And you can see the root protection area in red on the top slide and then dotted on the bottom slide, and how the driveway has been moved back out of that root protection area. So I know there was a lot of you at the site visit yesterday. Just as a reminder, the slide shows the views along Old Church Road, looking both east and west in direction, with the descriptions written underneath those photographs for you. And this slide also provides some additional images that show the footway on Stone Drive and the bottom left, and the point in which it connects to Old Church Road on the top right. As an aerial photograph also shows Stone Drive extends to the south towards the amenities associated with the village, and you can see the wider area there. The area is also served by a network of public rights of way, and these are shown in the pink dotted lines on the plan to the right. This includes the lane to the west of the site that we walked along yesterday to access the site, and the photographs numbered 1 to 4 are taken at various points along that public right of way from the north travelling southwards. And the plan at the bottom is an extract of the landscaping plan that also identified the footways that are intended to be within the site and how they interact with the public right-of-way network to the southwest corner. Noting the parish council comments and some of the comments we had on site yesterday about upgrades of the public right-of-way, I draw members' attention to the heads of terms relating to transport that include options to use contributions for the provision of pedestrian and cycle dedicated routes. And delivery of Section 106 projects is undertaken in consultation with ward councillors and parishes, and that might be something that needs to be considered at a later date. But the plans that have been proposed do show that interaction with the public right-of-way in the southwest corner of the site. So turning to the site itself, as we saw on the site yesterday, the existing topography of the site is a very gently undulating, falling broadly from north to east and west to south, but with a slight gully running east to west through the middle of the site. A small stream runs east to west from the south corner of the site, with a section of the stream. Field boundaries, including those enclosing the site, are predominantly formed by hedgerows, with variable but generally high numbers of hedgerow trees. The northwestern boundary of the site is marked by a post and wire fence. So these slides show photographs taken from within the site, with the arrows on the screen plan in the middle showing the direction in which they've been taken. Further photos show the site context, and you can see the variety of dwellings that can be seen from the site. And noticing yesterday the differences in scale and character of these dwellings, including bungalows and two-storey properties, and the way in which the boundaries are formed with the site. We discussed yesterday we commented yesterday, the undulating nature of the site, and one of the questions was asked whether the proposals would follow that proposed follow the changing levels of the land. Whilst there will be some changes expected through development, to try and explore this further, I've reviewed and provided had a look at the existing topographical levels supplied within the FRA at Appendix B. And we've compared these against the finished floor levels detailed within the drainage plan. This exercise indicates that the proposed slab levels generally follow the existing topography. However, conditions are suggested will further control this aspect, and this is important when looking at hard and soft landscaping detail with the final details, to ensure that levels are maintained across the site and that undulating nature is appropriate. It also ensures that we're looking at whether there's maybe changes to levels with retaining walls or anything like that, that's picked up in the landscaping plans as well. The slide shows the indicative street scene of the dwellings to the east of the site, and I've included some of the photographs I've taken yesterday of this view looking east to try and show the changing nature of the land. The plan to the right is the landscape plan that depicts the dwellings and their relationship with the dwellings to the east. These dwellings do include two-storey dwellings and bungalows. The majority of the back gardens extend to around 20 metres to the boundary, with the exception of the bungalow at plot 1, which is around 9.5 metres. We also discussed briefly the height of the dwellings, and these two-storey dwellings in this street scene range from around 7.5 metres in height to ridge to 8.15 metres in height to ridge. The design and approach has been carefully considered in the report before members. This slide shows a second street scene that's been provided at section BB to the south of the site. Again, you can see that this follows the topography of the site, and we've also looked at this in terms of the drainage plans and topographical surveys. The proposed layout includes a large area of public open space, which incorporates a sustainable drainage systems, a community orchard, walkways and children's play area. The open space extends along the entire southern boundary of the application site, and the proposals incorporate the tram lines to the southwest corner of the site that are also to be preserved. So some photographs here of the area to the south, including the designated heritage assets. Just thought it was useful just to understand the boundaries and how that interacts with the neighbouring properties to that southern area. The submission also includes a landscape section to assist with the understanding of the topography and the relationship with the dwelling known as Hopyard Cottage, which lies to the west of the site. This is the bungalow adjacent to the field access we entered the site yesterday. Top section shows the east-west section, so you can see the bungalow Hopyard Cottage to the west, to the left of this section, and the bottom one, a north-south section showing the topography and the proposed pumping station that's located to the south of the site. As you've seen from the report and the detailed correspondence in respect of the matter, drainage and floodwater management have been a key consideration for this application and proposal throughout. You'll note the considerable level of objection on this matter relating to relating to surface water management, flood risk and to foul drainage arrangements and capacity. The application has been supported by a flood risk assessment and a detailed drainage strategy, and there's been various iterations of that through the process. The report covers these matters in some detail and recommends conditions. Based on the updated submission and clarifications, the Council's drainage consultant, who's also the lead local flood authority, does not raise an objection to the proposals. Severn Trent, as a statutory consultee, does not raise an objection, but does recommend a condition be attached to any decision. The plan details the drainage proposed strategy that includes the provision of suds ponds in the lower part of the southwest of the site. And I draw members' attention to the detailed section and explanations of the drainage strategy within the officer's report and within the consultation responses. Looking at the element in terms of the suds ponds in a little more detail, I note that the immediate neighbours raised concern about the proximity of the ponds. This slide does show the bungalow to the left of the top slide next to the ponds, and concerns about flow exceedance, and detail of the ponds. These matters have been carefully considered at the design stages and considered in the report, and no objection has been raised by technical consultees. The ponds are also to be landscaped and planted, having regard to biodiversity enhancement, and are proposed. A number of the ponds are proposed to be designed as wet ponds to offer the biodiversity enhancement, and this is captured in the ecological report submitted with the application. Photographs show this relationship and view from the south of the site, looking back towards the dwelling on the top right, and the photographs on the left show the relationship of the house and where the ponds would be sited adjacent to the property. I also note the photograph provided by one of the representations in the updates members received, and I asked for clarification on the inclusion of a land drain. I think that was mentioned on site yesterday, along the boundary of that property to the east. The land drainage consultant has confirmed that this could be considered as part of the condition that's been suggested, but it would need to be done in consultation with Severn Trent and at discharge of condition stages. So, turning to house types and scale and design, this slide and the next slide will show a couple of the house types proposed, including a mix of detached, semi-detached and terrace properties and bungalows. The designs provide a variety across the scheme and include a range of detailing such as strong triangular gables, step brickwork, horizontal brick cladding. Chimneys have also been added to the designs at the request of the Building Conservation Officer. And again, I'll bring members' attention to the very detailed analysis of the design and its context in terms of the conservation area, listed buildings and the area of outstanding natural beauty within the report. The application is also supported by an illustrative landscape plan, again part of the pack I handed to you yesterday, and a boundary treatment plan. There will be some boundary treatment removal required to facilitate the proposed access, but overall the proposals incorporate the retention and enhancement of existing boundary vegetation and new hedging. Evergreen hedging is a common boundary feature in the area, and close board fencing is only proposed in a very limited way to manage the internal plot boundary division. Conditions are suggested to control this aspect in the future, as close board fences can have a significant impact on character and can have an impact on the area of outstanding natural beauty and conservation areas. So we're looking to control that in the future. To conclude, the application seeks a full planning permission for the erection of 36 dwellings on a site known as Site 2 Gravesend Farm. The site is allocated within the made Cowall Neighbourhood Development Plan for residential development for a minimum of 32 dwellings and open space. I draw members' attention to the detailed and clear summary of the clear issues contained within the planning summary and conclusion section of the report, which assists in identifying those issues that have been very detailed, covered in detail through the report. Various changes have been made during the course of the assessment of the application, and this has led to a number of public consultations being required. There's been a high volume of representations, including a number of further representations over the course of the last week. It is acknowledged that the vast majority of those who have commented on the application are not in support of the proposed development, but matters raised within the representations have been considered as part of the assessment of the proposals and have prompted further requests for information and amendments to the scheme. Overall, officers' assessment of the scheme concludes the proposals accord with the development plan, and there are no material considerations to indicate that planning permission should not be granted. A Section 106 agreement is required to secure the necessary planning contributions generated through the scheme that are detailed within your report, and the delivery, as well as the delivery of affordable housing. Draft heads of terms have been provided, and they would form the basis of the legal agreement. As such, the recommendation is to permit the planning application subject to the Section 106 agreement. Just like to take moments, well, just to say thank you to Chloe Smart, who was a case officer throughout this application, because a lot of the work, most of the work that's been done on this application has been done by Chloe. Thank you.
Thank you, and I think we'd all add to the fact that the thoroughness of the report is a tribute to Chloe. It sounds as if she's died, but that's
She hasn't, just showing.
no, I know. Anyway, we'll now move on to the public speakers. Can I now invite Mr. Robinson to speak on behalf of Cowall Parish Council? You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. As you have heard, this is a designated development site within the Cowall Neighbourhood Development Plan. The Cowall Neighbourhood Development Plan was passed by referendum on the 6th of May 2021 and was made on the 7th of June 2021. The whole of Cowall Parish lies within the Malvern Hills National Landscape, previously an area of outstanding natural beauty. As a consequence of the importance of the landscape, a landscape sensitivity and capacity assessment and a visual study were prepared as part of the development of the Cowall NDP in order to identify sites for development that limited the harm to the Malvern Hills National Landscape as it is now known. The landscape sensitivity and capacity assessment grades the capacity of land between 1 high capacity and 9 low capacity, and was used to create the capacity table in our NDP. It shows possible development sites around the main village in order of their landscape capacity. Starting at the top of the list, the first achievable site is the old school, a brownfield site, which has also been designated. The second achievable site at level 6 is Gravesend Farm, what is being discussed today. Development at any other site would have greater impact on the local landscape and on the national landscape. The site is already surrounded on 3 sides by existing built form, and as such has limited impact in views from and to the Malvern Hills and across the Malvern Hills national landscape in general, tucking in visually to the existing built form. The site provides 36 houses with 14 social housing units on a site that's close to the heart of the village, with easy walking distance to shops, post office, surgery, pharmacy, rail and bus stops, and therefore minimising the use of car travel. The Parish Council supports the application. Thank you.
Thank you. And now can I invite Mr. Melling, a local resident, to speak in objection to the application. You have 3 minutes.
Adrian Mealing, Cowall Revised NDP Group, 40 members supported by hundreds of local residents. I've lived in Cowall for 33 years. We want new homes on predominantly brown and grey sites which prioritise local housing needs. Small, affordable homes for young people, local families starting out, workers with local connections, but these houses need to be in the right place. Polls since 2015 have consistently shown 90% plus of the village against Gravesend and 90% in favour of Mill Lane, where your officers propose an allocation in the new emerging local plan. So why did a parish poll in 2023 attract 504 voters, of whom 92% voted down the main product of their neighbourhood plan? Firstly, none of the CDP consultations set out the significance of conservation area status or the 2001 character assessment, which identified an important open space visible from scheduled monument British Camp. Contrary to your officer's view, the estate would radically alter the peaceful rural character of Old Church Road and environments permanently. Secondly, for reasons genuinely unfathomable to the village, the PC switched allegiance in 2018 from Mill Lane to Gravesend without any community consultation whatsoever. Thirdly, inclusion of Gravesend in the NDP infuriated the village when its status and protections under planning law became clear. Its character assessment was made public only after the NDP had been made. Officers of the council are on record as saying no such document existed. It did. Our group sourced a copy in 2018. The credibility of the PC is sadly at a low ebb as many of its members have dismissed the opposition to Gravesend since 2015. You're aware of the exceptional number of representations, 2 in favour, 342 against, vehicle access along a narrow country lane, increased dangers to pedestrians, horses and cyclists, the non-deliverability of cycle and pedestrian access direct into the village, Severn Trent's unresolved sewage discharge problems in Cowall, Hopyard Cottage 5 metres from and lower than a SUD's unacceptable risk. For these reasons, the community is prepared to take any approval by this council to the High Court for judicial review. Please reject Gravesend while we revise the NDP with a housing needs survey. Support Cowall. Say no, we want new homes but not on protected land. Thank you very much indeed.
Can I now move on to invite Mr. Broomfield, Ms. Sorry, I apologise, who is speaking on behalf of the applicant as the agent. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. As you know, your experienced officers have undertaken a comprehensive assessment of this application following a thorough review of all planning considerations, and they recommend approval. This proposal is the type of development project a planner is pleased to work on, as it wholeheartedly responds to the plan-led system. We're all aware of the need to deliver housing, and most people know someone who would love to purchase their own home but is not in a position to do so. Most people are not against housing delivery in principle, and those who generally support a proposal and have no issues to raise tend not to comment on planning applications. Understandably, however, people worry about what change development could bring if it's near where they live. There is always a discussion about where is the right place to deliver housing and whether it may be anywhere other than the application site currently being considered. Development is intended to be plan-led, meaning that sites which are considered suitable in the local development plan are those sites which have been determined to be the right sites to accommodate the housing we need. The decision to allocate this site for housing followed detailed consideration of heritage and AONB sensitivities, acknowledged and accepted by the independent inspector who was appointed to examine the plan-making process. As a result, your council is including the delivery of housing on this site to count towards your housing land supply figure. This proposal is policy compliant. The housing has been carefully designed to respond to AONB guidance. Substantial areas identified in the allocation for open space are delivering open space. In line with policy, it will deliver a mix of housing types and sizes at a density of 16 dwellings per hectare, 7 are bungalows and no exceed 2 stories in height. It provides a policy compliant amount and mix of affordable housing. Access is proposed in the location specified in the allocation policy. The proposals would deliver a safe pedestrian link to the amenities and facilities of Cowall, as required by the allocation. Key views are retained, as required by policy. A full assessment of heritage impacts, including on Cowall Conservation Area, has been carried out by the Conservation Officer and Planning Officer, who agree that proposal meets the relevant policy requirements. Ecological habitats will be enhanced. The existing uncontrolled drainage conditions on site will be substantially improved by installing sustainable drainage features which are designed to manage the collection, retention and slow release of surface water. An existing collapsed storm drain through the site will be replaced and diverted within the site. The proposal includes suitable foul drainage system to connect to the public sewer. It's entirely the Water Authority's responsibility to ensure capacity in the public system to accommodate the allocated development. And as has been mentioned, conditions are proposed to further review this. We understand neighbours' concerns about change in an area that they choose to live, but we trust that a balanced decision will be made with due regard to your officer's assessment of the relevant issues for consideration under our plan-led system, which is designed to deliver the housing we need in an appropriate way. Thank you.
Thank you. If you could now take your seats back in the public gallery, please. Thank you. The local member for the ward is Councillor Heathfield. She speaks first and then has the right to speak at the end of the debate. She does not have a vote. She has 10 minutes time limit. Thank you. Councillor Heathfield.
Thank you very much, Councillor James, and thank you very much, everybody, especially obviously the developer and the councillor for all of that excellent paid work, and thank you very much to the parish council and to various members of the community for huge and incredible amounts of voluntary work on the neighbourhood development plan, on how it might evolve, and on this development. I'm very sorry that I need to be in London. I needed to be in London yesterday and today, so I missed the site visit, and I'm very glad I can be with you in this weird disembodied form. So this site is what I have received the most communication about since before becoming a councillor and now. And as follows, the objections received, most of that communication has been in the form of objections and concerns. There is a very clear geography to those concerns, with everyone who's got in touch with me concerned about this site living on Old Church Road, Stone Close, Stone Drive and the Crescent. As has already been mentioned, the roads that are around the site. And it's really important for me as the representative of the whole ward that I need to speak up for everyone in Cowall and everyone in the ward. And so I've taken care with door knocking that I have done, with speaking with people at public events to make sure that I'm speaking with everyone. And I must say that I do believe that there is a very large, very silent number of people in Cowall who are supportive in that this site is not right next to them, and that they do recognise that Cowall does need more housing, and particularly more affordable housing. There are also 3 people who are not on the parish council who have told me directly that they have found the campaign against the site intimidating, in that they have not been able to speak up about their support for the site. So obviously there is a really strong, there is just a massive strength of feeling about this development in Cowall, and the issues that have been raised with me. I particularly want to mention concerns about health, the sense that general practice services within Cowall are at the point of collapse, and that more people coming into the village will make that difficult. Big concerns about train services being cut in Cowall, and so therefore the sense that actually more, a higher population would help potentially bring those services back. Very big concerns about sewage treatment in the village, and I have been very involved with testing water quality in the local watercourse, and it is quite heartbreaking, the difference in the phosphate levels above and below Cowall sewage treatment works. And also obviously the concerns about groundwater and stormwater runoff on the site. There are also big concerns about the narrow rural lane, concerns about safety for pedestrians and cyclists. Cowall is remarkable to me compared to a lot of Herefordshire villages, of the numbers of pedestrians and cyclists who are out in Cowall regularly, and it's a Cowall just is such a lovely, lovely place and has such a strong sense of community. And yeah, most of those people live on narrow rural lanes that are unsafe, that require drivers to drive very carefully and all road users to act very carefully. I think it's important to recognise that. There are also concerns about ecology that have been raised. Obviously a big issue that has been spoken about is that this issue of landscape and the national landscape and the conservation area and its associated character assessment. I think overall, obviously issues have been raised about the process of this development, and I suppose to not want to repeat anything that's already been said, I just will additionally note that housing targets are back. They're being announced by the new Labour government this morning, and it will be interesting to see the impact that has on the new emerging local plan and all of our communities within Herefordshire. So really that brings me back to this strength of feeling within the community and this real sort of very sad sense of animosity and adversariality that I have noticed as a councillor. And all I can report on is that I have just seen a very heartfelt desire for positive change within the village and a very data-driven approach by everyone involved. They may sometimes be using different data, but all I can say is that I have not seen anybody acting against the interests of the village. There are no villains here. And all I will really mention is that there is definitely a very secretive and underperforming water company who I'm very upset with for ignoring lots and lots of data that I've been sending to them. And also it seems a very toothless water regulator. So I suppose my final 2 points are that I noticed that there are legion conditions that potentially need to be on this site, and so I can't help but come to enforcement. My concerns to what happens if conditions aren't met. I suppose I bring to the committee concern about, for example, the recent experience of the housing development in Bosbury, where just during the construction, groundwater and stormwater runoff really did need extra action to deal with properly. And so just really want to bring that to the fore of everyone's minds. I do think that Cowall needs extra investment, potentially beyond Section 106 agreement, because it's where everyone wants to live. If I was thinking of moving home, Cowall is where I would want to move to. Developers know this, and there is such strong pressure to develop here. I think we need to look after Cowall. I do believe in the end, though, that housing can make Cowall even better, can support the brilliant services that it already has and make it an even better place to be. Those are the points that I wanted to make. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Heathfield, for a very thorough presentation. Can I now invite debate? Could I just say one general thing before we begin the debate? Can I say anger and threats do not help anybody's case. Threats of judicial review, etc. We've had that many as a planning committee and as a planning authority regularly over the years. It doesn't help your case. Can I say that? Thank you. Now I invite debate.
Yes, may I just ask for a small clarification? 16 units per hectare, how does that compare with averages? Can someone add some context to that?
So outside of those more sensitive areas, then we would normally be more than 30 to 35 is pretty average for Herefordshire. Obviously, we're looking at density. This is very driven by the constraints of the site, so that's why it's a lower density. And that is just the developed area, not the open space area.
Councillor Simon.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much to Kelly for taking us onto site yesterday, giving us the context. And again, I'd like to reiterate Chloe's excellent officer's report, which was very detailed, set out, I thought, very well the tensions that are before us. I would like to thank the speakers. It was obviously passionate from Mr. Mealing as to his understanding of the site. I think we're a bit damned if we do, damned if we don't. There's clearly a huge number of objections to this, which raise very valid concerns, and I agree entirely with Councillor Heathfield's assertion about Severn Trent and the sort of consultation comments and the history of that within the officer report indicate that the lack of kind of information and evidence that had gone into that, despite this being a plan-led system and this site having been allocated. As I said, it's difficult when an application receives so many objections, but we are in a plan-led system. I appreciate there has been concerns about the NDP process and it being made, but it has been adopted, it has been through review, it is an allocated site. We therefore then have to move on to how that development is proposed to come forward. It's clear to me that we are being asked to be the decision-making authority in here, that the site has given, is in a very sensitive area, it's within the national landscape, it's within the conservation area, but those factors have been given due consideration by the officers and by the developer in how that is coming forward. It's clear in relation to the site levels that there's going to be a condition that does address potential for cut and fill and the use of the gardens for that spoil. I would really like to make sure that condition is upheld and enforced to ensure that the gardens are not at a higher level than the houses behind them on either the Crescent or the neighbouring drive. I think that there are conditions to do with lighting. I note they refer to the dwelling. I'd like to make sure they extend to the gardens, so there's not lighting of the gardens, which then introduces another impact on the landscape. I note within the NDP, it was importance to limit the harm to the national landscape. That's obviously changed now to proactively conserve and enhance the natural beauty of the AONB. I do think there is obviously a tension with that within this site being allocated for housing. I do think this really does take into account the density of the development, the landscape form. I really like the boundary treatments and the removal of any large fencing along that boundary. I think the two of the suds being wet, the attenuation ponds being wet rather than dry, also delivers some ecological benefits. The report does acknowledge the tension on Old Church Road and that it does change the nature of that within the conservation area. I think I'm content with that. I'm not happy about it, but I do understand that, you know, the addition of the footway extension there, whilst not perfect, does provide some security for people walking there, particularly as it heads towards the Mathen Link Road, where it does get busier on that road. So I would like to thank the case officer for helping to produce a better development. As long as the conditions are enforced and are applied, I would be content to support this development.
Now, Councillor Thomas.
Oh, no, not that rare. The only thing the NDP, what the people want to do about that, I'm afraid is up to them. I have been involved in creating an NDP. I took round every single door and picked up all the replies. So why this one is considered to be wrong, I don't know. But anyway, that it's a marvellous combination of bungalows, local needs and other houses. I think it's probably as good as we're ever going to get. I think with the landscaping, I think it's a great improvement over what is just a plain field. I can't see any problem with it, and I will be supporting the application.
Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, I commend Chloe Smart's report, 106 pages, covered just about every eventuality. And I'm certainly mindful of the extent of local concerns. Most of us members received a number of emails over the past 7 days from local people, mostly objecting to the application. However, the site, as we saw yesterday at the site visit, which was extremely useful actually, it falls within the settlement boundary and appears to be a natural infill in that particular area, and it meets the conditions of the Parish Council's Neighbourhood Development Plan. It's a good mix of dwelling sizes and designs, but I was concerned by reading one of the owner, in fact, of Hopyard Cottage, who wrote to me, probably, and the rest of you, with regard to concerns of flooding. I did mention yesterday to Miss Gibbons whether or not we could condition a land drain to surround that particular bungalow, and I've since discovered that there is one there already that's collapsed. Whether we can condition or even request that if this is approved, that the developer funds the installation of a land drain. I know they work. I have one surrounding my house, and they're very efficient if they're installed properly with the correct bore of a pipe. I can't see any planning reasons why we should refuse this application, and I support the officer's recommendation to approve. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh my God. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Chair. I have great sympathy with the residents who are expressing concerns about this site. I used to live in Cowall myself, very close to where this site is, and I think the nature of Old Church Road is quite different from Stone Drive, even though it tees into it. And I think Cowall has a number of very distinct and quite different feeling areas to it. It is, I think, one of the longest villages in England, and the area of the town, of the area of the village where this development is proposed to go, is where a significant proportion of the houses constituting the village are located. I do accept that there are concerns about the aspects of the conservation area maybe not having been fully taken into account during the development of the NDP. I also recognise that the NDP had quite a high turnout. Over 50% of the population of the village voted in the NDP, and it was a really close vote. 52% in favour, 48 against. And of course, we left Europe on that basis. So you know, a majority is a majority. I also accept that the brownfield site of the old school is a site that, you know, having lived in the area, I would have expected to have come forward earlier than any other development in the village. And I note that the village has already delivered 73 new dwellings since the beginning of the current local plan, and has a significant reserve of commitments, and this forms a further element of the 51 allocations yet to receive planning permission. The update of the local plan that has been going on just recently is identifying that areas such as the national landscapes should be given a greater degree of protection and less housing development targeted for them than other areas because of the nature of their sensitivity. Unfortunately, that is not a planning policy framework which is in place now and is therefore not the policy framework under which this planning application can be considered. Mill Lane, again, yes, I agree. It's a road that could better take the induced vehicle movements as a consequence of a development of this size or greater. But that's not where we are now either. And so consequently, I'm
sorry, we've just gone over the 3 minutes.
Well, I would just like to finish by saying I'm reluctant that I can't find planning policy reasons to give a robust refusal on this application, and consequently, given the framework that we're having to operate under, I will have to reluctantly support the approval of this application.
Are there any other sorry, Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, and thank you for the opportunity for a site visit yesterday. It was, it's always wonderful to drive down by the Malvern Hills and to see that area. It's beautiful. And to go out onto the field, you know, to actually look around and see the scale of the place. So it helps to put these plans into context and get an idea of the land that's there now. I mean, we do romanticise our countryside a lot because we think that's open fields is how it's supposed to be, but actually it should be covered with trees and it should be, you know, forested and so on, not just plain fields. And if that's what's going to be left all the time around these areas, but there is quite a large area here of planned orchard and open ground, which is wonderful and would probably make, you know, the vista from Hopyard and from these other houses much more pleasant than just a plain field with some electric fencing on it. But those grounds, I don't see whether they're going to be maintained properly, because it would be awful if they were all planted up and then the trees are left and they just die off, which happens quite a lot when young trees are put up. You know, they're not maintained and they get neglected. But if there is a condition, you know, maybe if somebody could to tell me about that. And then the other thing was obviously about the access, and people were saying about getting footpath or reducing the amount of traffic going onto Church Road in some way by having pedestrians or cyclists being able to get out of that area into the adjoining Crescent or the other roads. I didn't quite see how that was going to work in the plan. But like you said, like the other councillors have said, there doesn't seem to be any other planning reason why it should be prevented. Thank you.
Ms Gibbons, you just want to comment on the last point?
Yeah, I thought it was just useful to clarify. So there's conditions in respect of management and maintenance, but actually we do capture those within the Section 106 agreement as well, especially where there's management maintenance of SUDs and with open space areas, so that for the future it's not just a condition, it is in part of a legal agreement.
Councillor Stimmers.
There's one thing I'd just like to add, Chair. Kelly, can you confirm, I saw reference to solar panels within Chloe's report. I also saw it within the design and access statement. However, I can't see them on the approved or the plans for approval. I can't see any condition relating to solar panels either, specifically for each development. I know that they set out how they need to be within the national landscape, i.e. not reflective, uniform colour, etc. I would just like to, how do we capture that? It doesn't seem to me that it's clear within the plans or the report that these are on each dwelling. I think it refers to the EV chargers on each dwelling. But, you know, in this day and age, we need to be having high quality development with renewable energy source generation on there.
Okay. Yeah, so it is the report 6.173, thank you, Ollie, does say on each dwelling. But I think in terms of a materials condition, we could add to the materials condition to ask for details of the solar panels for each dwelling as well, if it's not already in here somewhere. but I'll make sure it goes into that condition.
Thank you. Along with the lighting in the garden. Thank you.
Noted.
Right. I don't have any. Oh, Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. Having heard all the discussion, I think it would now be appropriate for us to accept the planning officer's recommendation, and that we actually approve this planning.
Can you make that as a formal
yes,
as a proposal?
As a
Thank you.
proposal,
And
yeah.
that's seconded? Councillor Thomas. Right. There are no other speakers. Then I'll move to perhaps our planning officers to.
No, I think good debate. Thank you for the time yesterday. I think that was really useful. So it's just a couple of extra conditions there, or amendments to the existing conditions to pick up the lighting in the garden areas, and a solar panel detail condition and delivery detail. Oh, and another one.
Councillor Salmons?
Sorry, there's just one more thing. Just to confirm, the permitted development rights are removed. There cannot be any hard boundary fencing put up. Is that confirmed? And also that no additional sort of development in terms of garden rooms or large structures in the gardens, particularly backing onto Stone Drive. So because of the sensitivity of the area and the site, we need to make sure that going forward, that doesn't become more developed with structures. I just want to check that. Thank you.
Permitted development rights have been removed for the boundary treatment, but I can add, if you wish, the permitted development rights for other garden rooms and the like, if given the sensitivities of the area, if that's something that members would like.
Yes, I think that's general agreement.
I think we can't demonstrate that we are actively enhancing and protecting the national landscape without those being removed.
Right. Are there any further comments to make? Then I'll go back to the local member if she wishes to say any further comments in summing up the debate.
No further comments from me. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you. To a debate. Not a debate. A vote, I should say. Can I now ask for those in favour of the resolution in the agenda with a couple of amendments, I think, to that resolution, which we've all agreed. Can I ask for those in favour, please indicate. That's unanimous. I call now that has been passed. Can I now call for a 10-minute break, and we'll force end. Right. Can I ask that the recording now has started? Okay. Can we now move to... can I request that the public speakers present in person for the agenda, item 7 for the meeting, Mr. Bufton, Mr. Clayton and Mr. Andrews, please take their seat in the public participation table. Right, good morning. I welcome you to the meeting and will call you on to speak on following the officer's presentation. The second application before us concerns land adjacent to the C1059 Hatfield, Leominster. Proposed residential development of 5 dwelling houses with associated vehicle access, together with drainage, infrastructure and planting. Officer who's dealing with that is Mr. Ollie Jones, and he will now make a presentation.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Good morning to members. And again, I'd just like to thank those of you who attended the committee site visit at Hatfield yesterday morning. Hopefully that was useful just to contextualise the site. So as the Chair's pointed out, the application seeks planning permission for 5 dwellings with vehicle access from the C1059 and includes drainage infrastructure and planting as well. Just like to draw members' attention to the committee update sheet before you. So an additional representation has been received, but officers have comfort that those matters have been addressed within the report. Additionally, an updated ecology report has been received following the request of officers, and the recommendation has just been updated accordingly to reflect that as well. And finally, with respect to updates, there is just a revision, an amendment to condition 5, and that's the surface and foul water drainage condition as well, and that was just a drafting error, so that should be clearly set out within the update sheet. So the site is located by the red star as shown on the slide. It's located Hatfield, a village about 8 miles east of Leominster, 5.5 miles south of Tenbury. The site is just over 1 hectare, irregularly shaped, and is bound to the south by the C1059, the main road that runs through the village of Hatfield. There's an existing gated field access located near Curate's Cottage. Woodland Coppice lies to the north, with open pasture to the east. The site's not at risk of flooding, but is within the River Lug catchment, which forms part of the River Wye SAC. Next slide, please. So this just shows the application site, which is edged in red. And members will have seen yesterday on site, it forms part of a wider parcel of agricultural land laid to pasture. So it just runs through some photos before we have the plan. So next slide, please. So this just looks east along the C1059. So you can see the site access, the existing access to the left of the car, Curate's Cottage to the left, so to the northern side of the road, and Lockley's Farm to the right, so just to the right of the car on the photograph. Next slide. Yeah, so this just shows the existing gated field access opposite Lockley's Farm, and this is where we gained access to the site yesterday. So you can see the site there laid to pasture. Next slide. So yeah, so this looks in the opposite direction along the C1059, back towards Curate's Cottage. So you can see the existing southern boundary of the site the boundary hedgerow, and then the western boundary with Curate's Cottage, again, hedgerow, mature trees, and then the sort of woodland coppice that runs along the sort of northwestern boundary of the site. Next slide, please. And again, looking north along sort of the main part of the site. Site's essentially level, but falls slightly away to the northwestern corner of the site. And then I think the next slide brings the proposed site plan. So essentially what you have got is a pair of semi-detached dwellings located to southwestern end of the site, sitting perpendicular to the road, so with their gables fronting the highway. And then 3 detached dwellings, which include a single-storey dwelling. So there's 2 shared private drives with parking and access to the rear. Roadside hedgerow would be retained, except for where access is required. And again, new tree planting is located throughout. And then to the northern part of the site, you have the swale, drainage mound, and orchard planting as well. So the next slide just runs through those individual house types. So firstly, we've got the pair of semi-detached dwellings, so fairly traditional in the design approach and use of materials, so red facing brick, dormers, timber porches, chimneys. Both of those are 2-bed dwellings. And next slide, please. So yeah, so this is the single-storey dwelling. Rendered elevations, brickwork plinth. You can see solar panels feature as well. And that's 3-bed. Next slide, please. This is a detached 3-bedroom rather dwelling. Again, solar panels featuring, but otherwise fairly traditional in its appearance and its design. Next one, please. And then the last dwelling, the largest of the 5, detached 2-storey, 4-bed, a mixture of materials again, centrally positioned, pitched porch, integral utility space, and a larger detached garage to the rear of the dwelling. And then the next slide I think just shows the garages for plots 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Again, fairly standard there in terms of its design. Next slide, please. Okay, so the main issues are detailed within the officer report. Very important to outline that the determination of the application must be made in accordance with the plan, unless material considerations indicate otherwise. The development plan, in this case, comprises solely of the Herefordshire local plan core strategy. So it's noted that concerns do exist locally about further housing within Hatfield. It's important to note that Hatfield is a named settlement for growth within the core strategy as outlined policy RA2. Policy RA2 sets out the expectations for housing development in rural settlements across Herefordshire. So the next slide will just go through that to provide some clarification there. So appreciate there's a lot of kind of words on the screen, but just talk through that for a moment. So it sets out that development can be supported where it is within or adjacent to one of those named settlements. Comments and concerns have been raised with respect to the site's sort of disconnect from what can be considered Hatfield. So the next slide, I think, will just bring up a sort of map of Hatfield, and it shows the site with the red star relative to existing development. So you note the existing residential properties are marked sort of by the smaller red dots. The site is considered to lie adjacent to existing built development, and in the view of officers would therefore uphold the linear pattern of development. So you can see that Hatfield isn't nucleated. It doesn't have a traditional centre that you may expect in other villages. There are a number of detached dwellings that are sort of, albeit loosely, in an ad hoc manner, sort of straddled either side of the C1059 for almost sort of 3/4 of a mile from the church in at the western part of the site, and then right through to the end of the village where the site is located. So it doesn't have a traditional centre as is sometimes expected in other villages. So hopefully that just provides a sort of visualisation of that, and it lying adjacent to Lockley's Farm and Curate's Cottage, as members would have seen yesterday. So we'll just flip back 15, to the actual criteria of considering the acceptability of this site for further unfettered open market housing within a rural settlement. So the layout of the development would pay attention to the linear form, layout and character of Hatfield. It would essentially extend the village to the east. In terms of sort of point number 2, in terms of the criteria that references previously developed land, that's not always readily available in rural areas. It cannot be relied upon to realise the sort of housing targets set by the plan. But it's obviously a preferred option where that is available. In relation to point 3, the development would always considered to provide bespoke designs which reflect the varied and traditional mix of development within Hatfield. This isn't a typically suburban development. There are a varied mix of dwellings which would assist in contributing to local distinctiveness. And I know we touched yesterday in terms of the proposed site plan and the retention of the boundary hedgerow and the absence of sort of more suburban forms of landscaping that you may expect on other housing developments. And then finally, it really is worth noting that the scheme would provide smaller units. You know, there are 2 2-bed units, 2 3-beds and a 4-bed. As well as a bungalow as well, so single-storey dwelling, and obviously that's considered to weigh in favour of the scheme as well. So hopefully that's useful to understand some of the considerations in assessing the development's compliance with the plan and specifically policy RA2. Officers would consider the development does comply with the expectations of the policy, the current relevant policy relating to the supply of housing in Herefordshire rural settlements. I know there have been repeated sort of concerns about the strategic housing land availability assessment, the SHLAR. That's its discouragement of the site, and those comments are noted, and officers acknowledge that. But it's important to understand that this application needs to be considered on its own merits with regards to the development plan as the starting point, and that is set out within the report. So that's the Herefordshire Local Plan core strategy. Worth noting, Hatfield doesn't benefit from a neighbour development plan. So in other villages that you have a sort of non-standard layout, you may have a settlement boundary or sites that are allocated to direct housing development. That isn't the case at Hatfield. So we are going back to the criteria of RA2 in terms of whether or not it's within or adjacent. And that's why I think it was just useful to set that out today. So moving on, I think that just goes back just again as well. Yeah, so just going back to, again, some of the main issues. So in terms of highways, no objection has been raised from the local highway authority. There was considered sufficient road capacity with construction impacts being managed by conditions, as well as access details and visibility displays. The visibility displays can be accommodated within the highway, given the setback of the hedge and the curvature of the road here, as hopefully members will have noted yesterday. And I think condition 17 does restrict the hedgerow removal to those 2 points of access. So I think it's 2 sections of 6 metres that would be lost, and that is it. So there's no further hedgerow that's needs to be removed or translocated to accommodate those visibility displays. The site is relatively level and adjacent to existing development. Visual change would nevertheless be incurred as is expected for a development of this nature. But landscape impacts can be managed with appropriate landscaping. Trees and hedgerows would be retained with relatively significant additional planting as well. And that again is secured by condition 14, specifically relating to tree protection there as well. Again, in terms of residential amenity, I know there have been some concerns again relating to this. Due to development's nature and the distances involved, it's not considered that there would be any adverse impact on the existing residential relationship here. Construction impacts can be managed through conditions and restriction on working hours. That's condition 11 within the officer report, as well as construction management plan as well. In terms of ecology, an updated ecology report has been received. This is just due to the fact that the ecology report that was on file was considered out of date. It was sort of more than 18 months, 2 years old. So a request for essentially an updated report was made, and that has now been received. Fortunately, we've not had the opportunity to obtain comments from the ecology team on that yet, but it is under review. And that's why the recommendation is as it is, so it allows for the review of that prior to a decision being made should members support the application today. And with that as well, condition 15 would be updated to secure any updated ecological protection, mitigation and compensation that is within that report and endorsed and recommended by the ecology team. In terms of flood risk, and drainage, the site is located within flood zone 1. Surface water drainage would use an attenuated system discharging to a ditch to the north of the site, and that would include swales as well. So members yesterday will have picked up on the fact that the site is visibly poorly draining, clay, essentially lack of soil there. So that's why the system, the strategy is as it is proposed. Again, there have been a number of iterations of the drainage strategy over time, and officers have sufficient comfort now to be able to make a positive recommendation with respect to the information provided, but nevertheless, there would be further details with respect to the final design and sizing of drainage features, as well as management and maintenance as usual there. And again, so that would be secured by condition 5 as set out within the update sheet. And yeah, just to note that that includes details of foul water as well, which would be managed by a package treatment plans with discharge to a drainage mound. And again, that strategy is proposed because of the ground conditions at this site. Development's considered to be nutrient neutral, and has been supported by, the application has been supported by a nutrient neutrality assessment and mitigation strategy which sets that out. And has informed the council's habitat regulations assessment, which has been undertaken and submitted to Natural England, who have concluded that they have no objection to that and concur with the authority's conclusions. So to sum up, in the round, the application is for 5 houses, which would situate adjacent to Hatfield, a settlement named within the council's current development plan for some growth. Its layout would uphold the linear pattern of development within the village. It would provide a mix of housing, including smaller 2-bed units, as well as bungalow provision. And that is something that's seldom found in some of these smaller housing schemes in the rural areas. The design is considered to be such which would respond to local distinctiveness. The proposals demonstrated nutrient neutrality, and there are considered no adverse highway safety implications, with ecology and drainage matters being suitably dealt with by way of planning conditions. So as such, it's considered that development complies with the relevant policies as contained within the development plan, and there are considered to be no identified material considerations which indicate that a decision should be made other than for approval. Application is therefore recommended for approval as set out within the update sheet and the conditions outlined within the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Now, can I ask the Speaker, Mr. Bufton, to speak on behalf of Hatfield District Group Parish Council? You have 3 minutes.
Hatfield District Group Parish Council does not support this development. The first point the Council would like to be noted is that the small village has a static caravan park at one end and a camping site in its centre. No applications for dwellings within the village in the recent times, approximately 11 in the last 5 years, have been opposed by residents, but due to the following points, in this case, 78 objection letters have been submitted. RA21 identifies Hatfield in figure 4.15 as a smaller rural settlement where only proportionate development will be permitted. The new development would increase the village size by at least 20%, and when the other recent developments are considered, this would be an increase of 50%. This is not proportionate development. This is a major development and is not in keeping with a small hamlet such as Hatfield. The application is for 5 dwellings, yet the roadside frontage being proposed on this side of the road would be only sufficient for 1 or 2 dwellings in the remaining if you were to look at the rest of the village. RA21 specifies in relation to smaller settlements that all proposals will be expected to demonstrate particular attention to form, layout, character and setting of the site and its location in that settlement, and how it will contribute to or be essential to the social well-being of the settlement. The proposal is not in keeping with the rest of the village, which is mainly cottages and farms from several different eras. There are no 2 dwellings next to each other with the same facade. The application is for 5 very similar looking properties, and as above will be much more tightly grouped. The development is outside the curtilage of the village, set in the Greenfield site. According to the SHLAA document, the site is visually, physically disconnected from the village. The land proposed by the application was described as not recommended for development and has no development potential. The proposal is not essential as there have been several new dwellings within the village in the last 5 years, and there are major developments proposed, approved in Bromyard, Leominster and Tenbury, all with full amenities and within 7 miles of Hatfield. Policy 4.8022 of the core strategy states the national guidance emphasises the importance of not promoting unsustainable patterns of development in rural areas. Policy S7 addressing climate change and CO2 emissions both would not support the building of a large number of dwellings in a village 7 miles from any amenities supplied by poorly maintained narrow roads. Surface water runoff is also a concern as the water from the site will be running off more quickly, speeding up the erosion of ditches and ponds, which has been increasing in recent years as rainfall patterns have changed. And some of the water from this area also drains to ditches and drains to the bottom of the village where it floods into the road outside Old Hall. So increasing of runoff is a real concern.
Thank you. Can I now invite Mr. Clayton, local resident, to speak in objection to the application? You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Hatfield is one of Herefordshire's oldest hamlets and is mentioned in the Domesday Book. The original settlement was located around the 13th century church and has extended 1 kilometre east to Curate's Cottage. Today, 21 houses in total. So it's a very small hamlet. The natural boundary has existed for 170 years. We believe the proposal contravenes policy RA2 of the core strategy for smaller rural settlements, where development should be proportionate in keeping and meet local needs. To support this position, the site lies outside the natural boundary of the village, as evidenced by Hereford Council's own Strategic Land Availability Assessment 2019, prepared by other planning officers. It states the site is distinctly outside the village settlement area, visually and physically disconnected from the village. The site is not recommended for development. Government guidance advises this document is to inform plan making and decision taking. That's government guidance. The development is not in keeping with the form and character of the settlement. All existing houses are individual with large gardens and distinctly unique. There are no two-storey semi-detached buildings as proposed. The density of housing proposed is significantly higher than that within the locality. Hatfield is well ahead in housing delivery. 3 new developments in progress as infill, plus 8 new dwellings at Common Farm. The same farmland belonged to just a few years ago. 8 new dwellings already, plus 3 in process. The development will have an adverse effect on the landscape and aesthetic of this historic hamlet, positioned directly at the main approach into the village. The development is not sustainable, we believe, contrary to policy RA2 and SS1. There are no amenities in Hatfield apart from the church. There's no bus service from Hatfield. The road is narrow, single track, 14-mile round trip to most of the Tenbury, Leominster or Bromyard for shops or employment. Frankly, it is in the middle of nowhere. There are known issues of surface water flooding on the heavy clay soils. Expert evidence, independent, has raised serious concerns regarding the suitability of foul water drainage treatment mounds on such soils. The site drains directly into open ditches adjacent to the proposed ponds and ponds within adjacent historic woodland. To conclude, the community has generally been very supportive of previous residential development, but considers this proposal as neither proportionate, sustainable, or indeed appropriate for one of Herefordshire's oldest smaller settlements. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clayton. Now I invite Mr. Andrews, the applicant, to speak in support of the application. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Hello, everybody. My name is Colin Andrews, and together with my wife, Di, are the applicants. We would like to thank the Council's case officer, Mr. Jones, for putting together such a thorough report and concluding that there is no reason not to approve the application. Your Council's technical officers and consultants, together with experts we have used, have found no reason to turn it down. Since taking over the land at Common Farm a few years ago, we have converted to full organic status and have, with the help of Herefordshire Meadows, created 10 acres of wildflower meadow, now mapped on the priority habitats inventory, which is quite a big deal. Also, we have planted 25 acres of herbal lays and annually plant 5 acres of wild bird food mix for the benefit of overwintering small birds such as linnets. Under the guidance of the Forestry Commission, we are managing 16 acres of ancient woodland that slopes down to the Humber Brook. All of this is accessible to the public via a footpath and bridleway that runs through the farm. Hatfield is a lovely example of a North Herefordshire village, and the addition of these few homes should add to its character. With a good mix of 2, 3, 4 and a bed and a bungalow, we feel it is better suited to the location than, say, 4-bed homes. We are particularly pleased that the homes have plenty of space and large gardens. We will gain nearly 500 metres of hedge and over 100 new trees, plus the orchard being planted below the drainage area. If all goes well, we hope to live in one of the homes, leaving our son Ben to run the farm the family have rented for the last 85 years. If I may, I'd like to respond to one of the objections. The design of the drainage mound is governed by Building Regulations BS 6297, and before building occupation will have to be signed off by the Environment Agency before getting a discharge permit. Even though the design proposal is fully compliant with UK legal requirements, we are going to plant a small apple orchard below the drainage mound so that the scheme will be even better than neutral. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Now we move on to the local ward member, who is Councillor Baker. You have 10 minutes maximum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd first like to commend Ollie Jones on his extremely comprehensive report, as his normal quality. I must say here that I always find it difficult when I'm asked, as the ward member, to challenge a planning officer's professional recommendations. It's the penalties of high office, I suppose. To members, thank you for coming to the site visit yesterday, and I hope you found it informative. I also hope I can persuade you that this application is an obvious example of the wrong scale of development in the wrong place. This village, or should I say this hamlet, sits as a ribbon or linear development along either side of the C1059, and you will have seen this layout when you drove through the village yesterday. The traditional and long-established settlement boundary sits between the church at the western end and Curate's Cottage in the east, a total of just 21 dwellings. And with the exception of a few infills and several repurposed workers' cottages and other farm buildings, Hatfield has remained virtually unchanged for over 170 years. It's a long time before neighbourhood development plans were a twinkle in a government minister's eye. This planning application has resulted in objections from every resident in Hatfield. The proposed new houses are of contemporary designs, including a pair of semis that will overlook the rear gardens of Curate's Cottage, especially during winter months when the leaves have fallen. This development is completely out of character for this traditional Herefordshire hamlet. On the other hand, the 8 dwellings that we've heard about, and I pointed them out yesterday, that sit to the northeast of the site, these produced no objections at all from local people, and the dwellings are fitted in well to the local landscape with no adverse effects. The site is regularly waterlogged, and you will have seen the land is of poor quality and has never been cultivated. The topsoil is shallow with a solid clay base that's not permeable. So the water just sits there. In fact, when I visited the site a few months ago, I was unable to enter the site because of the standing water. One of the other major concerns is the outflow from the proposed package treatment plant that will service the entire site. The wastewater will be pumped from the site to a series of existing ponds which sit within the historic woodland just to the north of the site. How this water will eventually affect the local flora and fauna will remain to be seen. Hopefully it's not too late. A number of concerns have been raised by external consultees regarding non-compliance to core strategy policies and non-compliance with BS 6297 in respect of the foul water drainage strategy. You will have noticed these problems outlined in the officer's report from section 5.3.5 onwards. You will have seen yesterday there are no facilities at all within the hamlet or the surrounding area. The nearest shops, doctors, dentists and all the other usual facilities require a 14-mile round trip as there's no public transport. There's a primary school in Breedenbury, but there's no school bus, so yet more car journeys. Looking at a few council planning policies, and I apologise if I repeat any comments made by the previous speakers, and officers may challenge my interpretation of these policies. Policy SD2 identifies new housing development in rural areas, where it says that it will be acceptable where it helps to meet housing needs and requirements and supports the rural economy, local services and facilities, and is responsive to the needs of the community. There are no housing requirements in Hatfield, no local services or any other local facilities, so no rural economy to support. Policy SS6 is a strategic policy relating to environmental quality and local distinctiveness. The policy outlines that development proposals should conserve and enhance those environmental assets that contribute towards the county's distinctiveness. This development, if allowed, will do no such thing. Policy SD2 relates to delivering new homes and establishes the overarching requirement for the delivery of homes in Herefordshire. It specifically states that such proposals should not result in any significant detrimental impact upon the character of the landscape and the built or historic environment. I'll leave it for members to consider the scale of any potential detrimental impact. Policy SD1 requires development proposal to create safe, sustainable, well-integrated environments for all members of the community. New buildings should be designed to maintain local distinctiveness through incorporating local architectural detailing and materials and respecting scale, height proportions and massing, while making a positive contribution to the architectural diversity and character of the area, including, where appropriate, through innovative design. I pause for effect. Sorry, that's my note. Policy RA3, you can decide if this site falls within open countryside. Finally, we come to our old friend, Policy RA2. Housing proposals in relation to smaller settlements, and Hatfield is on the list as we've heard, will be expected to demonstrate particular attention to the form, layout, character and setting of the site and its location in that settlement. And they result in development that contributes or is essential to the social well-being of the settlement concerned. I'll conclude with the Strategic Housing Land Availability Assessment, which we all know and love as the SHLA. You'll be surprised to learn, I think we heard this earlier on, but it bears repeating that this actual site was previously referenced by planning officers. I don't know if it's the officers before us today, that they said that this site has no potential for development. The reports also that this site has low to moderate capacity and is visually and physically disconnected from the village. It concludes by stating that the site is not recommended for development. So what's changed? Taking all these points and policies into consideration, you must decide if this application meets all the requirements listed within the core strategy. In my opinion, it does not and should be refused. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Now we'll move on. Oh, could the public speakers please take your seats back in the public gallery, please? Okay, well, we'll open the debate. Can I have anyone who wishes to start? Councillor Thomas?
Right. Well, keep forgetting that because I got a loud voice. This one troubles me. I'm a big supporter, as you all well know, of rural housing. I think we are desperately short of it, and people having to go many, many miles away from where they work is totally wrong. But to me, first of all, this is open countryside. This, I know it's adjacent to, but I think that's a very loose word. And I'm sorry, but I think that it's not really adjacent. It's totally unsuitable land, I will agree with that. Yeah, even yesterday it was as wet as hell. Excuse my French. But it's unsuitable. And driving through the village yesterday to come out to Leominster, there are a lot of places that they could infill if they wanted to. Not actually on the plan that our officer put up. There is quite a gap in the middle of the village on the right-hand side as we come towards Leominster, which you could put housing in. I just think this is one step out of the village too far, and it will ruin the village. And I also agree that the style of the housing is probably not captured the existing houses in the village, so I'm afraid I can't support it.
Sibbons. Thank you, Chair. Thank you to Ollie for your very detailed and comprehensive report. Thank you also for the site visit. Thank you to the public speakers for providing the additional context and understanding of Hatfield. It's not somewhere I know particularly well. I will hold my hands up on that one. It is obviously a tiny hamlet. I have real concerns about the tensions within this site. Without a neighbourhood development plan in place, I think we are very, very constrained in what we can do here. It is within it is next to, adjacent to the settlement. The site does not extend beyond Oakfields on the opposite side of the road. I note that the applicant has control or ownership of the remainder of the field within the blue line boundary, which would extend beyond Oakfields. I note that 5 houses have been brought forward. I could see the potential for a further site being brought forward, but that's not under consideration at the moment. I would like to see that if this was approved in line with the officer recommendation, that it was very much recognised that the boundary of the village is where Oakfields extends on the opposite side of the carriageway there. I do welcome the provision of smaller sized dwellings, and particularly a bungalow, which I think is within better context for Hatfield. I go back to the fact that we rely on the core strategy having neighbourhood development plans in place to provide that nuance and site-specific detail and ability to control development. It does sit at RA2 on the adjacent to the development, so I don't feel that we can turn it down on that grounds. I do have concerns with regard to its isolation, that there are no sustainable transport modes, no ability to, get to any services without use of a car, and therefore it's deeply in contravention with SS7 addressing climate change. And for me, that is a real consideration that hasn't really been given sufficient weight in the report. Sorry. I'd like to hear more debate really on this one. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just say my concern is about the linear development of this, but unfortunately we do not have anything in the core strategy, that our existing core strategy, that allows us to refuse it on that ground. So I think that something with the emerging plan needs to be done about that. That needs to be stopped, I think. Otherwise we shall end up in the county with houses along every lane, every road, etc. In the coming years. But anyway, we'll see. Councillor Woodall.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we had a site visit. Thank you very much, Ollie, for that. I'd like to thank Mr. Andrews. It sounds like he's done a lot of things to improve the nature and the biodiversity in the area, and he's an example of what a landowner can do to improve the environment. But I am concerned about the drainage. It does seem that putting they don't have main sewage. Nobody does in Hatfield, and so it's relying on this little stream going into pools, which eventually go downhill to Humber Brook, and that eventually wiggles all its way down to Ducklow Pools, which I went to recently, which is a lovely area, and it probably ends up in the Lug eventually. So it's very concerning to see that, although the impact won't be much, it's an unpleasant thought to think that sewage will eventually make its way down there. The other thing, but I am conflicted because this whole idea about the parish boundaries or the area of Hatfield, it seems to be there's a duality there, because we're saying it ends near Curate's Cottage, but actually people are including that new builds or new buildings have been made up in Common Farm, which is much further up to the north there. So is Common Farm part of Hatfield or not? Is it part of the linear development or not? So this field would fall between it. However, as Councillor Simmons said, it's half of the field is being offered for development here, and so there's a bit of an indicator there that there's going to be some future expansion going on. And so I just feel uncomfortable about parts of this. But I do want to compliment Mr. Andrews on his support for ecology. But I'm sorry, I don't feel I can support this.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it was interesting to go on the site visit yesterday. I've not been to Hatfield before. I think I would probably have taken a wrong turn going somewhere else if I'd ended up there. As everybody else has said, it has no services whatsoever. It is a linear in its form, following the main lane through the village, but without a neighbourhood plan designating what the settlement boundary is. This application site is very clearly adjacent to the existing built form of the main portion of the village. The houses I noted driving through the village are mostly detached and distinct and individual in their design. This, I suppose, would be a development representing the 21st century in terms of design, but clearly members of the existing village community don't consider it to be an asset in terms of its contribution to the overall design and built form of the village. I would have been concerned about drainage and phosphate loading, given that this is within the Lug catchment. However, as a committee, we have a lot of information before us in the officer's report from expert consultees from Natural England, the Environment Agency, etc., who were all assuring us that the package treatment plant and the drainage solutions that will be provided as part of the development are adequate to meet all policy requirements. I think as far as the RA2 rural development in rural areas is concerned, it's just a huge frustration with the policy framework that we have at the moment that was brought in 2015. More than half of the development that's taken place in the county since the adoption of the local plan in 2015 has been delivered in rural areas. Now, and Ledbury, which I represent. The rural areas of our county have delivered a huge amount of individual development, but as other members have said, not in a sustainable way. I am struggling, however, with the policy framework that we have within which we have to make a decision today, to find sound grounds on which to base a recommendation to refuse on this. We can all feel in our hearts that this is not the right place for housing to go, but without a neighbourhood plan and without the revision of the local plan to address the weaknesses that put our rural communities at risk in terms of unsympathetic development, we don't have the tools before us to make a sound refusal. I don't believe, and therefore, again, reluctantly, I'll be having to support this one.
Thank you. Thank you. I totally agree. Councillor Simmons.
Thank you, Chair. Just to add, I was pleased to see, as I said, about the scale in terms of the dwelling size. Sorry, not scale, the dwelling size. I did also note the renewable energy generation on them, which I think is really to be welcomed. I would note, I don't know how the committee is going to decide, but if we were minded to approve, I would like to see if a condition with regard to a pack for new occupiers about how they use water within the house and which flows into the package treatment plant, so no bleaches and low phosphate or no phosphate washing powders, washing up liquids, that sort of thing. I know that all the information before us is talking about the suitability of it, but it's how people use their home water is really important, that is communicated in any welcome pack to occupiers. That's all I'd like to add. Thank you.
Ms Kelly.
I'll go with that.
Kelly.
So I didn't know if the members wanted me to just put the policy up on the screen so you've got that in front of you. Is that all right, Alfie? I just thought that might be useful whilst you're having a think. Could you make it smaller? There we go. So I thought it might be useful just to put that back on the screen. I know Ollie went through it with you, in particular, those 4 criteria. In terms of Councillor Simmons' point on the package treatment plant, I think it forms part of the management and maintenance agreements policy condition. And yes, there are sort of quite strict requirements, I suppose, depending on the type of package treatment plant, about what can go in and what can't. But yes, that would normally form a part of that management and maintenance ongoing management maintenance condition that we would look at. So I think that's already on there. He's nodding, so that is already on there. But I just thought I'd leave that on there.
I was just going to say there's the usual water efficiency condition anyway as well, which is separate but is included nonetheless.
I think the difficulty, sorry Chair, can I come back? I think the difficulty is that is on the applicant, and monitoring then personal use of people when they buy their houses, what they choose to use. And I just think having a very clear welcome pack that informs residents of their duty, because otherwise how do we enforce and monitor that? So that's what I'd just like to say. Thank you.
I haven't got any more speakers at the moment, and I have not a proposal with a Councillor Simons.
I would like to propose, unfortunately, that we accept the officer recommendation, given we have no planning grounds, I don't believe, to turn this application down.
Yeah. Is there a seconder? Councillor Davies. Is there a no there? Can I ask if the officers wish to make some comments before I go to the local member?
No, I think, it's a difficult one. It's not a straightforward one with these smaller settlements. We've obviously got policies that look at the character in the area and how they interact with the existing hamlet or settlement and the like. And that's, that is the policy that's on the screen there in front of you. You've got the officer's report, which is in detail and has grappled with those issues through that process to come to that recommendation. Yes, we can take on board the comments in respect to management and maintenance and how that information is provided to those applicants. I don't think we can, stand over them and make people do that, but it is, it's a long-term management and maintenance for all of those properties, and people do have to take responsibility for those things themselves. We can provide them with the information, but yes, just to, I think, obviously just reflect on the officer's report and the difficulties that people have had to grapple with in terms of those the character and the scale of the development. But yes, just that's all I have to say.
Okay, so no other further comments from Mr. I'll move to the local member, Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, members, for your brief debate. I agree that there's no local development plan for the Hatfield group. It's all farmland, and all the members of the parish council are all farmers, and so it was their decision that he didn't require an NDP. Unfortunately, but there we are. But the settlement boundary for Hatfield village is long established. As I mentioned earlier, over 170 years, nothing has gone beyond those two, the church one end and curate's cottage the other end. And of course, that settlement boundary would appear on any future NDP. So there's no real argument about the settlement boundary. And with regard to Councillor Simmons, we're going to have bleach police on site, I don't know, or the washing powder committee, I don't know. I mean, I've never heard anything quite like that, but there we are. Everyone's entitled to their opinion, but it sounds a bit daft to me, but anyway. My final comment would be that these dwellings don't enhance the area. Bearing in mind, if young families are moving in, the number of car journeys every day is going to seriously exceed the local amount that's travelling through there at the moment, and that would be more of a problem than your washing powder, I would think. But anyway, thank you for your attention. I look forward to your final vote.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Right, we have a proposal and second, and which was being seconded. Can I ask those in favour, please show. Those against? That is carried. Abstentions? I think that was all. No, I don't think it was any abstentions. Oh, if for those members of the public who wish to leave, if they could leave now, before the next item, which will last some considerable time, perhaps. Where is she? Shall I? We'd better suspend this for 5 minutes. Okay.
Try it, yes.
Can I request that the public speakers, Mr. Milne, Mr. Fowler, Mr. Allenby and Mr. Neep, please take their seats in the public gallery, please. Good morning and welcome to the meeting. I will call you to speak following the presentation of the application following now. If Ms. Carlyle will be making the presentation, can I invite you to begin? If we, oh no, we haven't got the
Not up and running.
it's up and running yet. There's just a very nice picture of me. Yes. Right. Thank you, Ms. Carlyle.
Good afternoon and thank you, Chair. The proposal relates to both a planning and listed building consent application for the Hereford Museum and Library building on Broad Street. The description of development, apologies, Chair, you've confused me a little bit because you didn't do the, you didn't say the proposal out loud. So I'm just going to change my script a bit. So the proposal is for the proposed renovation and adaptation of the existing Hereford Museum and Library to become a dedicated and enhanced facility for Herefordshire Museum Service and viable for the future. This would comprise a museum, education space, galleries, cafe and staff facilities. And it also involves the existing, and also adds that the existing fabric and services are also to be upgraded to improve the museum's environment and energy efficiency of the building. These applications have been redirected to Planning Committee as it is on council-owned land and council buildings. The applications in front of members this afternoon are recommended for approval with suitably worded conditions as detailed at the end of the committee report and within Appendix 4. As this slide shows, the application site is identified in the usual manner by the red star and is within the heart of Hereford City. Although not a planning consideration, the proposal is supported through the government's Stronger Town Fund and is part funded by the Heritage Lottery Fund. Members will be aware following reading of the committee report that your officers have worked extensively with both the applicant and their agent to address concerns and also resolve the need for further investigation and information work via conditions wherever possible. Next slide, please. The top part of the slide helps with context, and this map shows the site area edged in red. The bottom aerial map shows the number of listed buildings in close proximity to the application site, and those are identified by the blue markers. Members will also be aware, as detailed in the report, the building is prominently sited within the Hereford Central Conservation Area and is in close proximity to Hereford Cathedral and its grounds, which is Grade 1 listed. The site is also located in part of Hereford City, which is covered by the areas of archaeological importance. The application site is located as part of a terrace of retail and commercial units within a prominent position within Broad Street. Next slide, please. This slide again helps with context, and the museum is highlighted by the red square and can be seen in the wider city context. This gives a good visualization of the area. Next slide. This slide shows the museum's front elevation along Broad Street as well as its context within Hereford City. And the museum building is again highlighted by the red square on the aerial photo. This slide assists with giving the overview of the existing roofscape and its context. The aerial photo is taken from the Cathedral Tower. There is no doubt in saying that the host building is an impressive and visually prominent building located on the west side of Broad Street, close to and opposite Cathedral Close. The building is 3 stories and covers the full depth of the plot from Broad Street through to Aubrey Street to the rear. As can be seen from the slide, the museum building's front elevation within Broad Street is one of Hereford's most spectacular Victorian Gothic buildings with a unique facade. And to reassure members, this elevation is not being altered as part of the proposal. Next slide, please. sorry, again, next slide, please. Thank you. The next three slides shows the existing and the next three slides show the existing and proposed elevations detailing the changes visually. The slide on the north elevation, this slide is of the north elevation, and the blue star helps orientate the elevation on the block plan. Existing elevation is the top plan, and the proposed changes can be seen on the bottom plan. Next slide. This is the south elevation, and again, can I refer you to the blue star on the block plan, and again, which shows the existing and proposed drawings. To assist, I've also shown a photograph of the site as present. This elevation has undergone the most changes, and the key changes include the beacon relocation, reduction of dormer windows with a simplified design, changing materials, and the Corten steel facade being simplified in detail and with perforated panel elements. These alterations and external appearance of the new build element, which would be considered as an improved design in change in terms of the prominence within the building and its impact on King Street and the views from the wider distances. Next slide, please. This is the west elevation, and again I refer you to the blue star on the block plan, and this slide again shows the existing and proposed drawings, as well as including a photo of the site as existing. Thank you. Next slide, please. This slide gives a clear picture of the proposed spaces within the building, as well as showing the roof, top terrace and beacon. Full description of the proposed works can be seen in section 1.11 of the committee report, and as this application is for both listed building consent and a full application, the list of proposed works are quite extensive. Next slide, please. This slide assists with inclusion of photos of the existing roofscape, as well as a sketch which easily explains visually some of the key changes to the proposals following the most recent round of changes to the design. In regards to the key design amendments, as a quick overview, can I refer to the sketch at the top right-hand side of the slide? Item 1 is in regards to the lift shaft to Aubrey Street, which is to be clad in slate. Item 2 is a relocation and redesign of the beacon. This new location minimises the impact of the key views, and it is now proposed to be a glass enclosure and with ambient space. Also, this in terms of the roof element, this overall reduces the visual impact of this element. Item 3 is in regards to the arched windows, and this has removed the in regards to the arched windows to the education space, which would have been replaced with a modern dormer window, and remove the arches with new architectural language. Item 4 is the lower roof terrace, which has been simplified and redesigned. Item 5 is in regards to the feature lancet window, which has been redesigned and again significantly reduced the size of the window. And item 6 is again in regards to the external wall to the east stairway, which reduced large glazing was reduced for smaller windows, and again it sits behind the perforated cladding. Next slide, please. This slide assists with the 5th floor element to the proposal, which is in effect a new level. This will provide a floor cafe and as well as external roof space. Also, can you see the beacon, which the beacon will have will allow 360-degree views. As I'm sure members will appreciate and acknowledge, a great deal of work has been undertaken by your officers to get to a position today where we can present you with a scheme with a favourable recommendation. And as detailed earlier, this follows a submission of additional survey work and design changes. As detailed in the report, and in particular your historic building officers' comments, which have been added as appendices to the main report, the works to the building are quite substantive and will include the removal of some historic fabric, but also involves the removal of modern features within the building. After extensive dialogue and consultation and the submission of revisions and survey work, the scheme in front of you today, members, has no technical objections to the proposal, as Historic England, the Council's Historic Building Officer and the Council's Archaeological Advisor have not raised any objections. As I'm sure you have noted in the committee report, the proposal has received numerous letters of support and only one letter of objection. This is detailed within paragraph 5.5, and then again at 6.41. The application has been brought in front of you due to it solely being a council-owned building and due to the one letter of objection being received. Other planning matters have been covered in detail within the report, and there are no other technical objections. Finally, to conclude, the proposal will bring the building up to date with thermal efficiency and will create an enhanced tourism facility to the city. And in reaching the recommendation, your officers have assessed the public benefits of the proposal against the less than substantial harm identified the Council's historic building officers. As such, the recommendation is for approval for both the planning application and the listed building consent application, subject to the appropriate conditions detailed within the committee report. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, members. This concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Can I now invite Mr. Milne and Mr. Fowler, local residents, to speak in objection to the application? You have 3 minutes between you.
Good morning. Today's meeting committee report sets out on page 21 the Civic Society's November 23 representations. The revised drawings do incorporate our suggestion of glass partitions in place to the originally specified roller shutter screens, but in other respects the revised plans do not fully address our previous concerns, which are street presence, the proposed removal of the iron railings from the Broad Street frontage, a cramped entrance, and visitor flow. We've recently learned that the lift and the staircase at the Albury Street end of the building will not be available to museum visitors, other than school groups heading for the top floor education room. Museum galleries are located on 4 floors. Visitor access will be via the Broad Street passenger lift, which has a capacity of 8 persons, or the stairs, which between the 3rd and the 5th floor is just 1 metre wide, barely enough for those ascending to comfortably pass those heading for the exit. The lift measures 1.1 by 1.9 metres. To be wheelchair friendly, building regulations recommended at least 1.4 by 2 metres. The lift at the Albury Street end of the building is in fact larger. During busy periods, were museum visitors to have access to the upper floors with a choice of using either set of stairs and lifts, the increased capacity would lead to improved visitor experience, as well as making the building feel less crowded. The design and access statement in paragraph 3.2 summarises an income generation strategy from a consultant's report prepared in 2021. This possibly requires updating to reflect the limitations inherent in renovating and repurposing this cherished heritage building, a project which members of the Hereford Civic Society heartily support.
Aside from the limitations to visitor circulation of the stairs and lift arrangements flagged up by David Fowler, and the loss of some original features such as the historic staircase to the librarian's quarters, this is an excellent scheme. However, the 4 beautifully crafted and probably Edwardian wrought iron alcove railings which complement the iron gates at the front are part of the museum's history, and an ironwork tradition for which Hereford is celebrated. Erroneously considered modern and therefore not assessed, so neither the Conservation Officer nor Historic England have specifically agreed their removal. Their removal is not required for operational reasons and cannot be weighed against any public benefit because removing them provides none. Your officer seeking to justify the loss with a subjective aesthetic opinion and a claim their removal restores the originally intended colonnade. It won't. I invite a member to propose a condition to secure their attention in situ.
Thank you, Councillor Milne. Can I now move on to invite Mr. Allenby, the applicant, and Mr. Neep, the applicant's agent, to speak in support of the application?
You can, thank you, Councillor James. So we'll share the 3 minutes between us. So as the applicants, I really just wanted to kind of commend what's a hugely exciting project and great investment to the city, much needed for the revitalisation of the city centre that we've seen and continue to see the decline in retail and the need to kind of create a new leisure and different environment for Hereford and Herefordshire. The project, the £19.1 million investment from a range of funding sources, a flagship project within the Stronger Towns plan will attract visitors, but also offer the local residents to kind of engage with their own culture, to access the Herefordshire hoard and lots of things that are currently in storage. And I guess just as a kind of a starting point to consider the basis of development, prior to the closure of the building, only 10 people at a time, due to fire regulations, could access the museum. This will create a new modern museum which will attract thousands of people to the city and the county and really support the local economy and local people access their culture. I'll hand over to Paul, who mentioned a few things in terms of the design.
Thank you, Roger. I suppose the funding streams available make this a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to refurbish, reimagine and secure the future of this heritage asset at the core of Herefordshire's cultural offering. The current library museum building has not been used for its full potential for some time now, and as you would expect of a building for 130 years old, there have been many layers to the building's life. Additions and changes have been made over time, some of which have contributed positively, others have not been well planned or integrated, meaning that substantial work is now required. The approach to redesign of the building has been carefully crafted to address the building's shortcomings and its quality, whilst responding to the requirements of a modern museum and art gallery. The design presented here today has been progressed by a specialist team in response to detailed investigations and surveys, with input from the Council's planning team, the Historic Building Officer, Historic England and museum team, as well as various stakeholder groups, including local schools and colleges, local businesses, Hereford Civic Society and numerous other community groups. The new roof and upper floor have been designed to sit sympathetically within the historic city roofscape, as well as providing a new place to experience the city from above and with the cathedral in context. The intention is that this will be a significant visitor attraction, but also a critical part of the museum story and experience. The proposals include responses throughout that are carefully crafted to respond to the heritage value of the historic building and protect and enhance the value as part of its works. Internal alterations have been aimed at discrete high-quality additions, balanced alongside reopening areas of the original building. We are incredibly excited about the opportunity to reveal areas of heritage significance that have not been seen for a generation and showcase this fantastic building once again. The opportunity to refurbish the building also comes at a time where the Council needs to prepare its building stock to meet national and local net zero carbon targets in the coming years. And the design follows a passive house benefits retrofit approach, which basically means that through an optimised approach to insulating, limiting air leakage, and taking advantage of solar gain and with new carbon-free heating and ventilation systems, the building would be an exemplar of how heritage buildings contribute to net zero requirements. And an added benefit of this is providing a low-tech approach to maintaining optimum environment conditions for artefacts and exhibits with minimal running costs moving forward. I'd just like to finish with saying that it's been a privilege to work on this project of this significance to our city, and we're incredibly excited about what this museum and art gallery will bring to the people of Herefordshire.
And just to very quickly add our thanks very much to Heather and the Planning and Conservation team. Their challenge has really improved the project.
I'll allow it on the grounds that it's nothing to do with your thanks. It's nothing to do with the actual application. Right to the local member, Councillor Jennard. 10 minutes to speak.
Thank you very much. I actually haven't planned anything for this because I sort of just assumed it was a matter of course that being a council-owned property, this is coming to planning. Yeah, just because. But we do have representation, and I thought I would just put a few comments forward. So I have been able to go and look at the library as it was and sort of as it was being emptied. So I've been inside. It's fascinating, absolutely amazing inside. There's all sorts of bits that the public will never have seen. And these are mentioned in the report, like the librarian staircase and things like that, which is an asset that in this case, with this design, will be lost. But I think for the greater good. So from Heather's report, which thank you very much for that, it's brilliant. It's very, very extensive. I don't know if anyone's looked at the many pages, or at least had a go at looking at them. So from what I've read and from what I understand from my visit to the museum building, this plan improves what's already there. It's improving the installation, it's improving the access. It's going to be an enormous asset to Hereford and the wider county. This application is supported by the Stronger Towns and Lottery Funds, which is really, really exciting. It is a unique building in Hereford, and whatever we can do to enhance that and encourage visitors, I think is just brilliant. There's so many years of work that have gone into this proposal, including consulting various stakeholder groups. It's been approved by all the official consultees, and well, it'd be really interesting to see your thoughts on it. I'm very excited by it.
Thank you, Councillor Jennard. Now, could the members of the speakers please go back to return to the gallery, please. Before I start the debate, can I just have some clarification of about the wrought iron gates on the start? The necessity for their removal. I find that difficult to understand. As you know, as someone who always rather liked them as I went by and in.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. I mean, in regards to the, in terms of the loss of the 4 wrought iron screens, I think my understanding is that they are internal, and again, I refer you back to the committee report because that is, in terms of the justification for their removal, has been detailed within 6.41 of the committee report. And I think in terms of, I reiterate in regards to sort of notwithstanding in terms of the significance or the loss of this heritage element in the overall scheme of things, officers thought that there was betterment in terms of their removal compared with, and again I reiterate that it's the only one objection that we've got regarded going back to the whole list that we've detailed in within paragraph 1.11 of the report of the work. So it's that they're deemed to be not part of the original sort of structure or the building, and informed officers, as I think was referenced by the planning agent, they've made the decision that on balance that their loss isn't deemed to be significant enough to in terms of their retention. It's a professional judgment, Councillor James, in terms of
yes, but that doesn't tell me. That doesn't tell me why it needs to be done. I mean, you know, there are parts of Hereford Cathedral that weren't in the original building, but that doesn't mean that they can be removed.
Sorry, Councillor James. I think again, if you read again, if you actually read in terms of the paragraph, in terms of the justification, we're saying that they, you know, that they're not deemed as original, and again, in terms of the benefit, in terms of the proposal weighing up the benefit, it was regarding in terms of the opening up of in terms of the entrance area. So again, that was an informed decision in that regard. So,
Heather, thank you very much for that very clear presentation and report. There's obviously been a huge amount of work, having read through all the appendices, the documents going on. Very much welcome the changes that have been made, particularly to the beacon and the kind of the visibility and outside of there. I do understand the conflict between the passive house insulation and retention of the interior and the listed elements. I think you've done really well to kind of try and address all of those various elements. I think it's going to be an absolutely fantastic asset for the town, and it is a once in a lifetime opportunity to use this money and get this done. having just listened to the element on the railings, I appreciate that it is a very small element within the overall scheme to where you've got to today. What age are those railings? I appreciate they are not original, but we have no information within 6.41 of, and I couldn't see anything within the appendices, but there were quite a lot, so please point it out. What sort of age are we talking? Because I see there a relationship there between that frontage and particularly the big gates of the museum and the railings across the road that form the boundary of the cathedral. So for me, it actually works quite well, and I don't see the rationale explicitly set out and supported for their removal. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, I think I'm sure Mr. Milne won't mind me quoting, because Mr. Milne's representation does, within his commentary, does detail in regards to the, I suppose, in terms of the historical context. And again, you're correct that in terms of the historic building officer, that hasn't been specifically addressed within their comments. Again, it's no sort of, I suppose, justification for why it's not. But again, it's like what you said. It's in regards to the in terms of the comprehensive, in terms of all the other areas. So in terms of the Councillor Milne's comments, Councillor Milne says the date is circa 1900. It's perhaps a shade earlier, but again, saying that they're not part of the original sort of contribute in terms of the original building. So that was the justification in that regard.
They were there when I was a child, anyway. So,
Oh, it's a long time ago.
so that goes back to the 19th century. Councillor Thomas.
I agree with you, Mr. Chairman. I can't see any point in removing. They've been there as long as I first went in that building when I was 6 years old, and they were there then. That's 70 years ago. Right. I don't know. I'm looking here at the enlisted officers report, and it says, in this current form, it is not possible to support the application in the terms of work to the fabric of the listed building and clarification amendments sought on several items. I think, well, it's a listed building. If the listed building officer can't support it, nobody can support it. Is there amendment to that?
Apologies, Councillor Thomas. I think you're maybe looking at in terms of the, I don't know what you're looking at, but in terms of the committee report, the most recent representation from the historic buildings officer has not objected, and again in terms of it's in terms of weighing up that public, the public benefits, they have not actually objected to this proposal, and that's detailed within the appendices 1 to 3, which is originally there was objections, but over the 3 rounds of consultation they have removed that objection.
Yes, I'd have to ask, why is it still in there then if we have a change, because obviously that, having been my profession for 30 years to restore listed buildings, that's an absolute no-no. So why is that still in there?
So we've got to tell the story of this application. So a paragraph 4.4 of the report, it says historic buildings officer, no objection, comments dated June 2024. What we have done is to provide you with the long story of how this has evolved, is provided instead of replicating all of those comments into this report, we've added them as appendices. I think possibly you're picking up one of the appendices and not looking at the most recent comments, which we've tried to simplify it by making them into appendices, but maybe we haven't. But so paragraph 4.4, just to clarify, the historic buildings officer has no objection on that basis, and there is a summary there at 4.4 of their comments. In June 23, there was an objection. In April 23, there was an objection, and they've been included as appendices for you. And I think you're probably picking those up. But at this point, there is no objection, and we've worked very hard to get to that point. And you're right, we wouldn't be bringing it here to you with those objections. So,
okay, yeah, I'll accept that. I'll accept that. one thing that very, very concerned me with the two objectors, this thing about the lift. You cannot have a 4-storey building without a working lift. If you're going to put the cafe on the top, again, is this right or wrong?
Was Clara?
Sorry to just to chip in. It's in terms. I think, like you say, just to clarify, there is 2 lifts within the proposal. There is this actual proposal is actually making some of the key rooms, like the Woolhope room, now accessible where it wasn't previously. So there is going to be a goods lift and a passenger lift. And in terms of that then adheres to policy SC1, which is in terms of community facilities. But in terms of I suppose the size of the lift, as I think was mentioned by the speakers, that is covered by different legislation in terms of building regs, and also in terms of how the museum will be run by the client. That's an operational management, and that is not under consideration today. But I reiterate, there are going to be 2 lifts within that building, and all floors are going to be accessible, which they haven't been previously.
I think it was made a little bit not very clear. There was a suggestion that all the levels were not, some levels were not accessible. They are. Councillor Woodall.
Thank you, Chair. So several things, but first off, just to finish off about the railings and the gate. The railings are the ones that we can see from the road, yes? So they're on the front, and the gate as well. Are the gates to be retained? So, okay, and they're actually physically in front of the entrance, whereas the railings aren't. So the railings aren't an obstruction in any way. Okay, so just to clarify, that's great. The next thing is that on item 3.1D, I'm sorry, there's a massive table there with all these different sections, and I may not have read this correctly. It is awkward to read a lot of these conditions when they're in a tabular form, but I appreciate the amount of work you've had to do in order just to get it onto a piece of paper is phenomenal. But in there, it describes about the internal wall insulation, which is probably part of the passive house. And it stops at the cornicing, it stops short of the roof. So that means there will be this temperature differential, won't there? There'll be an area at the top of the walls which is going to be a different temperature to the insulated wall, and that causes what I was told when I had my house done, thermal bridging, and that introduces mold and condensation. Especially you've got a lot of people. Hopefully, we're going to get thousands of people, as you were saying, coming to this, and there's going to be a lot of humidity in there. So is there some sort of mitigation in the way of air conditioning? I didn't see that, but like I said, I might have missed it because there's a huge table here. It does say on 3.1D, request to be conditioned. So further information required at this stage. So could you just catch me up if I've missed a bit on that particular issue?
Thank you for your valid sort of commentary. I'll be transparent with you in terms of that level of detail. I've had to be reliant on both the submission from the applicant and in terms of the language and wording of those conditions. I certainly don't mind getting that clarified, but again, in terms of that level of technical detail, that's something for myself as a planning officer I can't answer. I don't know whether or not the chairs want to ask whether or not the agent or the applicant can input on that if required, if you need clarification.
I think that's something that needs clarification after the meeting. If there is a problem, it can be dealt with at a later stage on conditions.
Thank you,
within the conditions.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it makes sense. If you're going to have a lot of human beings in a room, there needs to be circulation, air circulation at some point, and this will help mitigate it. But other than that, I mean, I'd like to, if possible, because we've sorted out the issue with the gates and the railings, I think, that that they are going to be, well, could we propose that that we accept this proposal on the condition that the railings and the gates are retained? Is that a possibility?
That's quite a possible.
Sorry, Chair. Can I just sort of clarify in terms of they're actually screens, not railings, and just to make sure that you actually understand they're not actually on the outside of the building.
This is what I wanted to check. Are they the ones we can see from the street? Because that's what I was.
No,
they're not. I
Just
thought
to
you
clarify,
said they were.
it's with
Right.
it's with.
Can we get confirmation of that on screen, please, so that we can actually know what we're talking about? Thank you.
If you go on
Yeah, but is there any way we can see them?
It's not on the. Unfortunately, it's not on the photographs that are on.
Well, we've got a photograph, I think, will come up, which if we enlarged it, I think.
Bear with me.
Yeah.
Whether we can get it on Street View. Turn to my friend Google.
Sorry, can I just interrupt?
Yeah,
I did listen to your, and I've read the report, and you did say there was no changes proposed to the elevation, but then obviously the Civic Society have raised about these railings. What are the other railings that you're referring to? They're internal railings? Because these are screens, railings, whatever you call them, between the arch colonnades on the front, underneath the notice boards. This is the ones that I think the Civic Society are concerned about the removal of.
There is nothing outside.
No, they are stuck into... They are on the outside of the building.
Can we just, can I suggest we suspend the meeting for 2 or 3 minutes whilst we find the Google picture, Street View? Can you?
Oh, let's Google picture now.
So, yeah, we could ask the representatives from the Civic Society.
Just a moment. We have a rule that we can't have public participation outside the public presentation within the meeting. I'm afraid once we, I mean, it would be all right in this case particularly, but unfortunately the principle then is set whereby we're having debates in the public gallery and
Yes.
which has happened illegally before. But anyway, so sorry. So the screens are those, are you suggesting those that are at the bottom? Yeah. Well, they're all external then.
Bear with, yeah, I think that's all back. So they're not sitting forward of the building at that point, but they are set there. So I think there's a couple of options. I think we could either take that. There's 2 options, isn't it? We could take that away, and we could get a recommendation to take that matter away and have a further look at that, and maybe come back in discussion with the ward councillor and the chairman potentially, or we could just seek some further clarification on that. I think the reason for its removal, if we go back to 6.41, was to improve sort of the legibility and the approachability of the building, to remove those barriers, I guess, in terms of how the building's approached and looked at. And I take we were saying they've been there a long time, but this isn't a different approach to improve the building. But if all members could request that they're retained and make that as part of the recommendation, or but either way, if they're to be removed and as per the plan, then you're still looking at it in the grounds of, well, what's the overall benefit of the bringing the building back in. It's just a part of that change. But yeah, just if you want us to go away and seek clarification, there is options to do that as well.
Chairman, I think it's like taking the Lions out of Trafalgar Square. They weren't there originally.
Yes.
Either. When Nelson...
I must say, sorry, I'll go to Councillor Hamlin. We'll come back to that in a moment. I missed him.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, a lot of what I was going to say actually has been said. I was going to actually propose that I feel that the removal or non-removal of these 5 items doesn't affect any other part of the project. And as such, I'd like to propose that they are retained on the basis that it won't harm the project in any further way. It's a very exciting, great project that we must all support. But I would like to make that proposal, as indeed Councillor Woodhall was going to as well.
You wanted to say something, sorry.
Am I allowed to?
Well, no, but carry on.
Or do I have to wait till the end?
No, strictly speaking, yes. But,
I would just invite members to have a look at the Hereford Museum and Art Gallery Windows and Door report, which is available if you would like to look on the planning application. There's just that little bit extra information about the windows at the front there, and just the idea that they're going to completely open up that space. They're going to remove the current display cabinets outside the front, and so those windows will then be a lot more open. You'll be able to see the columns that were there originally. There is a historic photo there without the railings. So I don't know at what point in time people started taking photos of historic buildings. I'm sure.
Well,
might
can I make a proposal that we deal with the gate, which I think is the finer of the two elements of this.
The gate's remaining, I believe, anyway.
Yeah. Oh, right. The screens, let that be dealt with after further.
It just removes them to be able to sort of keep that area clean, and they're not a barrier to.
Councillor Harvey.
I hope this is a free turn. It's not my speaking moment. Just to assist the committee, if you go to page 176 of the agenda pack, there is a picture side by side of the current and the proposed future front views of the building, and if you blow those up, you can see that the display boxes that are jutting out from the ground floor windows are proposed, as Councillor Gennard said, to be removed, along with the railings that sit underneath them, which prevent people from parking their bicycles under it, or, you know, bending down and then bumping their heads on the underside of the display boxes. So that it's really taking away the things that are sitting, jutting out from the original frontage of the building. And I think that's the question. If you leave the railings there and you approve these plans to have those display boxes removed, then the railings will be sticking out with nothing behind them or above them. So I think that is perhaps what needs to be understood in terms of both the approach and interpretation of the front of the building, and also its function and what might become a nuisance.
It shows the gate on it. Is it possible to enlarge it enough so that we can see?
Testing my tech skills in the middle of a meeting now. I've got that one. So that's with. Sorry. We're talking, that's with.
Right.
Yeah. And then if you move it. Oh, sorry, it's going to take a while because it's on the sharing the screen as well. Sorry. And then without the railings, you can see them both on the screen now, actually. So it's obviously part of a design concept that's been more well thought out, and thank you for finding those too many bits of this scheme going on. But in terms of a design concept and how that is promoting and making that building more legible, I mean, you know, whether or not there's a way to explain it in a different way, but it's as it stands, the proposal before you is to remove those, and for the purposes, it would seem, of making that more legible as per the committee report, and more approachable, I think was the word that was used. And
the other problem with the screens is that if they remain there with nothing above them, they will become where most of the disposable containers of coffee will be dumped. Members, Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to go for my 3 minutes now. Yeah, isn't it fantastic that, you know, this council is investing in heritage buildings, in promoting culture, and in a fantastic and energy efficient upgrade to a listed building. It's really good to see that our own historic buildings team and our planners and the other statutory consultees have worked just as hard in challenging and looking to better the design and this overall application as they would do on any other application that came before them. This has come to us as a committee because it is a council building, but it would and should come to us anyway, and we should give it as much serious consideration and thought as we give to any planning application that goes through our permissions process. I think this is a fantastic opportunity for the city. It's great that it's backed by the Stronger Towns Board and the very many community groups that form part of that Rainbow project. So I can see there's a huge amount of work that's gone on and a lot of improvements have been made along the way. I'm very happy to support this and look forward to it coming to fruition.
Other speakers? Yes, we have a proposal, the recommendation, I think.
I was in favour of retaining the screens, but we've had a lot of conversation since that.
Yes, yeah, debate.
So perhaps
I don't know what members think now. I mean, I originally thought that, but you know, when one looks at what the other part of removing the above appendages,
what about the gate? Is the gate staying?
Yeah.
Microphone.
So it's
Speakers, Councillor.
Sorry, I'm just going to reopen that. I can understand there has been a lot of work done on that. The Civic Society, you know, are a consultee, although not statutory, have provided us with their advice. It is over 100 years old, those railing screens, however you want to describe them. They do relate well to the gate that is to be retained. I still quite like the idea that we do retain them, but I have said that. I'm not going to propose anything different if no one else is going to support that. I just want that noted. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, yeah, I'll support that. I think it's, as I say, I think it's a definitely support it. So.
Okay, well, I put forward then a proposal that we
Can we just suggestion?
Sorry to interject. Just a suggestion in regards to the retention of the screens is that whether or not members would be open to the addition of a condition so that they're still removed but they're put in storage, and then there's the possibility that they could be used elsewhere within the museum. So just an option.
I think it's difficult sitting as a committee when there's clearly been a huge amount of work that Councillor Harvey and myself originally had recognised that, you know, and heritage officers had stated. I still haven't seen in that report, and despite all the bits, very clear evidence as to why they should be removed. I can see the very clear facade, but given that they have been there for so long, and they are, you know, integral to that fabric of that building for so long, I think, and because it reflects across the road with the heritage setting of the cathedral, and the gates are to be retained, I don't see it causes that much of an issue, personally. I would need to see more evidence that they should absolutely be taken off. Thank you.
Can I just say that my concern would be that they're set a little away from the wall, the internal wall, that becomes for very much, that if they were set against the wall.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Sorry, can I just come back on that? They are in situ. If there's still an issue with litter going behind them, we clearly are able to access it and get it out. It's not full up with litter. So it's not like we're putting something in that isn't already there. We're talking about taking something away that's been there for a very long time and forms currently, you know, obviously a valued fabric of that. The Civic Society have recognised the value.
Okay, so clearly something that you want to deal with, so I think this might be a best way to deal with it. So if you include a condition requiring them to be retained, and then we can move on and we can issue the decision which moves the whole project on. That then gives the applicant the opportunity to come back to apply to remove their condition requiring their retention. It gives the applicant the opportunity to provide the details that you're actually looking for and asking for. It gives the opportunity for the Civic Society to comment on that as well. And then that gives us a way to move it forward. So if we suggest a condition to retain the railings in situ, and then it gives everybody the opportunity to go away and do a bit more work on that, and then bring back when we're not trying to find the answers now. It might be that the answers are all sitting there and we'd be able to bring that forward another time.
Excellent suggestion. Thank you very much, Kelly. I accept that.
Bearing that in mind, unless there are no other speakers, can I suggest that we have a proposer and seconder for a resolution? Councillor Baker? Approval. Along the recommendations with the retention of the railings stroke. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
That's also for the listed building consent as well.
Yeah, that's for, well, it'll have to be. Yeah. Yes. Comments from Ms. Cowall or Ms. Gittins? No,
Nothing
none?
further, thank you.
I'll go. Councillor Jennard.
Am I allowed to put a condition on a condition? In terms of the railing, if the removal of the railings is needed for the replacement of the windows, which that might be a reason why they need to remove them, can they remove the railings to fix the windows?
I think we just will need to have that justification at that point. So, but this way is a logical.
Yep.
It's a practical way out of that situation for now, and gives everybody the opportunity to address it properly, and gives you the facts, gives the members the facts. If it needs to come back to committee later, we can do that. But it gives us the opportunity to issue the decision that we've got before us. I don't know the answers to the question you are asking, so.
Other than that, no further comments.
Right. Unless you want any further comments? No, none. Then we have a proposal with a proposer and seconder. Can I ask those in favour, please show? So that is carried. That was for the actual planning. Now the listed building consent, we need to vote again on that. Those in favour, please show. Unanimous again. Then that is carried. We'll now move on to the next item, which is item 9, Mordiford Bridge. Company officers. Can I request that the public speakers present, Ms. Cotton and Mr. Canning, please take their seats in the public gallery. We might finish before 2 o'clock. Good morning and welcome. Good afternoon, I should say, not morning. We'll call you to speak following the officer's presentation of the application. The application before us concerns Mordiford Bridge, Mordiford, Herefordshire. Application variation of condition 2 of permission engineering works to reinforce Mordiford Bridge at Flad Arch number 2 and number 3. The works will involve dismantling the existing parapet, casting a new reinforced concrete core against the existing upstream spandrel, extending the new concrete wall into the parapet, and cladding an exposed concrete with masonry to match the existing bridge to amend design. I'll now call upon... Oh, right, sorry. So I'll now call on our officer to make the presentation.
Thank you, Chair. I do have to bring to the attention to the Planning Committee that we did receive an email which followed the update sheet, which is in regards, so I'll just read out the salient points to that. So this was received... it was received by Mr. Stones, who is a local resident. Apologies, just got to double check. So the letter starts, please reconsider the proposed methodology to repair this bridge. It is not in the best interest of protecting the asset and is likely to cause long-term harm to the heritage asset. Reasons 1. It is never a good idea to mix reinforced concrete with a stone, rubble, lime structure. The existing structure is designed to be built and flexible. The reinforced proposal is not flexible and will result in further degradation of historic structure. Item 2, reference WSP method statement. How can there be any real benefit in preserving the bridge in perpetuity if it is encased in concrete? Can you imagine if we covered all of Herefordshire historic buildings in concrete? There's another concern with regard to the drainage holes. With the level of moisture and the mixture of concrete. The next issue is regarding the dismantling of major parts of the structure to implement the plan. The next concern is regard to the civil engineer and the concerns raised with that aspect. And then there's another concern with regard to the gas mains. That's obviously quoting the email which was received, and there was a specification on which ways they would like to go forward with that. Would you like me to read that? Oh, great. So I'll just continue then. The application is redirected to the Planning Committee and relates to the alterations to the approved scheme for works for Mordiford Bridge within Backbury Ward. The application is a council application which has been redirected owing to the objection raised by a local member of Mordiford Parish, in line with paragraph 354B of the Herefordshire Council Constitution. Mordiford Bridge is located to the northwest of Mordiford and is demarcated by the red star on screen, connecting Hampton Bishop and Mordiford. The bridge is part of the B4224 and forms a crossing over the River Lug. The bridge itself is identified by Historic England as a Grade 2-star heritage asset and dates between the 14th and 16th century. The permission relates to the alterations to the approved scheme, approved under 230283L, which was approved on the 5th of April 2023. The proposed design amendment relates to the retention of historic cut waterstones and the replication with new cut waterstones. Under Section 66 and 72 of the Planning and Listed Buildings and Conservation Act 1990, the local planning authority has a duty to preserve the setting, special architectural and historic interest of the bridge and its conservation area which it sits within. The Built Heritage Officer has offered no objection to the proposal, subject to an additional condition for the masonry details to be approved. The comments from the local resident are noted and make reference to the damage made to the bridge through part of its use as the B4224. The application does not seek to make structural alterations to the concerns raised by the local resident. It is noted that some aspects will require further planning consent to be made, but is not within the remit of this application to request this information. The concerns have been raised with regard to ecology and highways. It is noted that given the type of application for an amendment to a listed bill of consent, it does not fall within the remit of this application. Having regard to the National Planning Policy Framework, the Herefordshire Local Plan and the Neighbourhood Development Plan, it's the officer's view that the proposal should be recommended for approval subject to conditions as outlined within the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. to make?
Hello, good afternoon.
Yeah.
We welcome and support the proposed works to strengthen the bridge on the section located in Hampton Bishop so it can better withstand flood damage. But we feel that the closure of the bridge solely to undertake these works is a missed opportunity to address more pressing root causes or undertake visible repairs due to repeated road traffic incidents and less visible damage to the Mordiford section, which now appears to be subsiding. The causes of the bridge's problems are clearly laid out in Mr. Canning's report. These relate to the increasing volume, weight and speed of vehicles, the bad sight lines made worse by vegetation and the behaviours of vehicle drivers. We fully agree with Mr. Canning's well-evidenced report, who suggested solutions to the root causes and the conclusions that these should be addressed before the proposed works are undertaken. Mr. Cannings is an ex-councillor for our parish councillor, and at the time we worked together with him to bring these same concerns to your attention. We had several site meetings with yourselves and the then ward councillor John Hardwick. We had been told that there were to be traffic calming measures along the B4224, including the bridge. These have come to nothing, despite a memorandum of understanding with Herefordshire Council and the relevant parish councils. Closure or failure of Mordiford Bridge is a major business risk to the area. Minor feeder roads will be further damaged, particularly in wet weather, if the bridge fails. Using these will also increase road traffic accidents, lose time for business and increase costs for overtime and fuel. The bridge carries in gas and internet services. The imminent closure of the A438 at Bartestree Bridge for 6 weeks will inevitably result in increased traffic over Mordiford Bridge. This will result in further road traffic accidents and structural damage on the bridge, not all of which will be visible. This coincides with the harvest and tractors and trailers using the bridge to access the biodigester at Court Farm. Signs placed on Mordiford Bridge yesterday say it will be closed for 4 weeks from the 29th of July, coinciding with the closure of Bartestree Bridge. How will businesses, residents and emergency services cope? We fear the bridge is at breaking point, but we've not been privy to any structural engineering reports, so imagine have been conducted by Herefordshire Council. We think existing controls should be strengthened and rules enforced before repairs are made, as addressing the root causes is a priority. The PC agrees work must be undertaken, but the root causes need to be addressed first. Speeding, overweight vehicles, traffic volume, sight lines, signage, etc. Then all the remedial work, not just the one section, should ideally be done at once to reduce the risk from road traffic accidents and further damage. We wish to work with the Council and relevant stakeholders, officers and advisors of Herefordshire Council to find a solution. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon everyone. I was listed as an objector, but I'm not objecting to the fact that we need a bridge or to repair it, but really to the scope of the work that's proposed and the nature of the work. As you saw in the pictures that put up there just now, there are cones down the bridge. It's not the area that they're proposing to repair. There are 5 areas along the bridge which need urgent attention. You're addressing one of them, which is probably the least serious. The approach from Hampton Bishop has been hit 4 times in the last 2 years and is left derelict. You've got the bit that's been proposed. You've got a crack over the last year. The bridge has actually started moving apart because of work that was done in preparation for the proposed work. You've then got parapet missing. You've got further work down where a car hit it about 18 months ago, not being repaired. The medieval bridge has been pushed 2 inches away from the roadside. Nothing's been done of one of the oldest bridges, the oldest bridge, I think, Tims Bridge in Herefordshire. What is my concern? Well, my concern is just picking one item is not really going to address the problem. It should be taken as a whole across the whole bridge. I mean, and what we're talking about really is structural on the bridge. They talk about risk of flooding on that part, but maybe at most 50 days of the year there's water pressure against the proposed area. There's 365 days a year with 40-ton lorries going over it, causing damage.
Yeah, can I just say, we're here to consider an application, not to lobby for other works. We're a planning committee, not the highways committee.
Well, my concerns are that doing that one piece of work will lead to other damage elsewhere, and you can see that the stresses on the bridge from the initial work you did in preparation for this have actually caused significant cracking. So really taking this as one piece and not doing the whole lot is important within the application.
Yes, but you're not suggesting that we don't give them permission to do it.
No, I would request that you do the whole lot,
Yeah,
not
yeah,
the
that's
one
what I
bit.
say. I'm afraid we're not here to consider that matter.
But it's I think an adequate concern because you'll be closing the bridge multiple times.
Yeah.
And then on the actual heritage report you published, you talked earlier just now about the NPPF, the 207 2023, where this is classed as destruction of a heritage asset. Yet you say that's fine. It's significant or substantial harm to the structure, and we're putting up concrete and other things which, if you look at the planning regulations, NPPF, this is grounds for refusal of an application by the means that they're looking at repairing this. So I'm not sure how it got through your heritage without comment on that. A couple of things directly to it to end. Wildlife, you've got otters, kingfishers on that part of the bridge, you've got newts, you've got herons. In your construction work, how are you going to protect those species? I didn't see anything necessarily on the protection. And then on the traffic, we as my colleague has mentioned, it has been mentioned many times about how to reduce the damage. And one of the things we're asking is, while you're doing that at the same time, there are proposals to put signage up, proposals to do other changes. Can they be incorporated into the proposal? So again, it's done as one hit. So that's priority signage, it's a restriction of vehicle weights, readdressing the lines on the bridge. All of that was detailed in the report. I won't go through it now. But we have an opportunity now with this planning application to make a difference to that bridge.
Thank you. If you could take your seats back in the public gallery, please. Yeah. Councillor Biggs is not present, so I'll move on to the debate. Councillor Harvey is the first speaker.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to the members of the public who've just spoken. And picking up your point, we have a planning issue to deal with here. Clearly, there are bigger issues associated with the operation and the long-term security and function of the Mordiford Bridge, which is a beautiful bridge. But every time I cross it, it does kind of stun me that there aren't more sort of traffic management measures associated with it, because I'm forever meeting vehicles in the middle and jumping into the little passing place, and when it's a big vehicle, sometimes the passing place isn't quite big enough to be able to act as a passing place. This is a public realm issue. It's also, we have funds in the capital programme for undertaking bridge works, and clearly there may well need to be discussions about traffic regulation orders and other things, but that's not a planning issue that's before us. And I think, the useful thing that we can do today is to speed the repairs and the strengthening works on their way by approving what's before us here, but separately making sure that we're raising concerns, and perhaps, Chairman, it might be appropriate for you to make sure that there's a message that goes to the Chief Executive and the Cabinet member responsible that there is coordination of other works that may need to be done in order to secure the long-term safety and functioning of that bridge as an important river crossing for us, not least of which is going to be the coordination of bridge repairs and closures in the face of other closures on bridges and bridge works that are going on around Bartistry and Lugwardine. So I'm happy to support the officer recommendation to approve on this, and let's deal with the other matters in the appropriate forums outside of this committee.
Can I agree? I mean, we've lost what is so important in rural counties that we take for granted: bridges. I mean, the officers that used to deal with highways and roads when we now call them directors, etc., was always the county surveyor and bridge master, and bridges were considered as important, if not more important, than roads in those days. Right, any other speakers? Councillor Harvey, was that as a proposal to the recommendation?
Do you know, Chair, I think it was.
Yeah, right. Seconded. Any other speakers?
I just go to say, actually, the little bit of concern, because this is my field, about the repairs to it, that it needs concrete. It doesn't actually need concrete. If it's put back and reinforced bar is put inside the existing, you don't actually need concrete, but that's not what's been proposed, so I will leave that, and I've seconded it, so.
Okay, right. We've got a proposer and seconder. There is no local member to sum up. Can I now ask those in favour, please show. Unanimous. Then we'll move on now to the final item. Land at Hardwick Bank, Bromyard. The report is before us concerns recommendation to extend the period of time to secure a 106 agreement in relation to Hardwick Bank application approved by this committee on the 17th of January 2024. Mr. Jones, are you going to? Yes.
I'm indeed. Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon again, members. So as the Chair has set out, this relates to application 163932, lands at Hardwick Bank, Bromyard, forming part of Bromyard strategic site at Hardwick Bank. It's an outline application for sustainable urban extension, up to 250 dwellings, open space, allotments and landscaping, school expansion land, areas children play, sustainable urban drainage infrastructure, internal roads and associated infrastructure. So as you will recall, during our meeting on January the 17th, 2024, the committee resolved to grant outline planning permission, and that was subject to the completion of a Section 106 agreement within 6 months of the date of that committee. Officers are now seeking agreement to the proposed amended recommendation, which extends the negotiation period essentially for the Section 106 agreement pertaining to the application by an additional 4 months. Worth highlighting that there are no changes to the proposed development. We're solely considering the amended recommendation in order to extend that negotiation period. There aren't many slides to go through, but I think there's just one just for memory, which just shows the extent of the application site. Next slide. So yeah, the only matter for consideration today is to consider the amendment to the resolution to enable continued negotiations with respect to the Section 106 to take place. So as it happens, today is the 6-month deadline, very neatly aligned. So yeah, expiring on the July the 17th, 2024. So it's worth just to note that positive discussions are taking place and have been, but it's just that due to some of the complexities associated with some of those discussions, particularly surrounding the purchase of phosphate credits, which are required to mitigate the nutrient impact of the development, simply officers do require some additional time to negotiate those matters effectively going forward. Without approval of the extension, we don't have the authority to continue these negotiations to ensure that 106 can be completed and to secure the required obligations that are necessary to make the development acceptable in planning terms. As such, officers propose extending the period until November the 17th, 2024, and this would enable the continued discussions to take place. So the proposed recommendation is as follows, and I think that's on the final slide. So essentially, with the exception of the revised date, it's the same as previously. So outline planning permission be granted, subject to the completion of a Section 106 agreement by the 17th of November, and that's to secure the contributions that are set out and required, and again, they've not changed. And the purchase of phosphate credits. And it then states that should the agreement not be completed by the 17th of November, but reasonable progress has been made, delegated authority would be granted to the Development Management Service Manager to continue those negotiations and finalise the agreement and issue the decision. So essentially without recourse with the Planning Committee again for a further extension. Conversely, if no substantial progress has been made by that date, the application may be refused in consultation with the ward councillor and the chair of the Planning and Regulatory Committee. And the reason for that would be based on the failure to complete the 106 agreement, which is obviously considered necessary to mitigate the impact of the development and secure and ensure the delivery of affordable housing. And that sums up. Thank you, Chair.
Local member in this regard to this particular item. Councillor Simmons and then Councillor Harvey. Sorry.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Ollie, for setting out that this is a procedural administrative issue and that given that we've approved this subject to that condition and other conditions being approved and negotiated, I would just like to recommend that we move to accept that proposal and move on. Thank you.
Yes, well, I'm broadly supportive of trying to get to a conclusion on the negotiations. However, I am concerned about the detail on this and the potential impact that might have in terms of the bank of phosphate credits that are available to enable development to come forward within the areas of the low catchment and other places where we're needing to trade them or will need to in the near future. This is a large development and I am unclear as to the impact of, in terms of the total number of credits that we've got available to trade. We have a large indigenous, well, we have an indigenous development businesses in the county which are relying upon being able to access these phosphate credits in order to be able to conduct their business and to do the kind of small-scale developments that are bread and butter to this county. It's not the big boys, it's not the big developments, it's the little ones and the businesses and the jobs and the money circulating in the local economy as a consequence of all of that that is really important to keep going. Now, I know we have a number of other wetland schemes that are moving through the pipeline, but the pace at which they move will impact on the total number of credits we've got available. And this development could soak up a very large proportion of the credits that are available, which would have a knock-on effect for our indigenous building industry. Now, you know, as a consequence of that, you know, I'm a little nervous about giving a delegation to, you know, sort of get it done if progress is being made without there being any sight given to the consequences of any decision that might be thrashed out, seeing as this is a development of over 250 houses, is it? So I think my worry is the bigger consequences of having a large amount of the credits we've got available taken up with this when, for whatever reason, we may find that we make slower than hoped for progress in bringing forward other wetland phosphate mitigation schemes that generate credits to add to the bank that we have. So I'm supportive of this, but I'm concerned about the detail. and I'm not entirely comfortable about giving a delegated authority to just get it done if reasonable progress, whatever that means, has been made by mid-November.
I think there's that can be clarified, I think.
Yeah, I'll give you the short version. So
Yes.
in between committee and when we made this resolution, we put the 6 months on to try, for the exact reason you're saying, to try and move things on. In between that and now, we've had authority to trade on Tarrington. The Tarrington wetland is catchment based, and it was determined that this site could benefit from the credits from Tarrington, which would then free up the credits from Luston for a much wider, bigger catchment. What we haven't quite got to the point of doing is the governance, which should be sorted by the end of this week, in trading those things and moving this, because it's a different allocation policy. So we need that little bit of time to get our procedures correctly aligned. The applicant is on board with that approach and is happy for us to transfer and do the HRA based on the Tarrington wetlands instead of the Luston wetlands, once we've established as well what we call the occupation dates. So there was a few little things that are still needed to be worked out before we got to that point. So we are totally on board with exactly what you're saying. We're trying to move these credits around to give the most benefit to the most people in that timely manner. We've just got to get that governance sorted in terms of taking that report to the relevant officers and to change that allocation policy, which is in progress now. We had to do the work on what applications went to which catchment as well, which is a little bit beyond my understanding in some ways, I can assure you, but the ecologists have now done that work. So we have progressed as far as we can with them, but we just want to make sure that those credits are going to the right applications to free up the most amount of credits that we can to all of those people in that queue. So we are trying to work on that basis, and we're pretty confident that actually with the timescales we'll get this done in the next 4 months. It's only if there was something unforeseen that came along that would allow that, and that's why the sort of slightly, the
like
option
a change
to
of
make it
government,
change.
yes.
Yeah, but I think that's the bigger picture in terms of that has moved on even this week. So I think we are fully committed to doing that, and we are trying to work together to do that, and then we'll get those announcements out to the wider area, to the wider credit queue, let's call it that, as to which catchments people are in and how that might progress and who will be allocated what credits from which wetland. So it's progress. It's just this one's got caught in that bit of a holding pattern, I suppose, whilst we worked out those catchments and whether or not they were applicable for those. So hence the request for the extension, because people are working with us to do it, and it's not a delay necessarily on their part. It's a delay from our perspective in terms of us trying to use the credits in a different way.
And that's a simple explanation.
You have the long one.
Right. Anybody else wishes to? Is there a proposer and seconder? Yeah. Yeah, that's done. Right. Can I ask for those for and those against? 4.
4.
Any against? Abstention? 1 abstention.
2 abstentions.
2. Sorry. Oh, sorry. Oh, of course. Yeah. Sorry. Yes. Right. Then we come to the end of the meeting. Can I ask that live stream closes?